Welcome to the Volvo Ocean Race 2014-15 and to the Portuguese capital, Lisbon. Today it's time for the Volvo fleet to say goodbye to a city who has enthusiastically hosted the cruise since arriving here 10 days ago after their tough Atlantic crossing. Over 170,000 people have visited the race village, and yesterday the spectators were treated to a thrilling race on the Tack River as the intensity for the increasingly important Import Series peaked. A downwind start saw Team SCA jumping the line as Mafre and Team Brunel pushed into the lead. After one lap, Abu Dhabi Ocean Racing had sailed into second place and found Mafre firmly in their sights. The battle came down right to the finish line. Iker Martinez getting the best of Ian Walker as the two boats finished only metres apart. A few minutes later and the situation was almost repeated as Team Vestas Wind, winning their 6-month race against the clock to repair their damaged boat, found themselves snagging the finish buoy while battling Team SCA to the line. Abu Dhabi Ocean Racing now move 4 points clear of Team Brunel in the Import Series, vital if boats are tied in the overall rankings in Gothenburg. Now, thoughts turn to the penultimate leg, the 700-mile dash to Lorient, France. The forecast? Strong upwind conditions in the Bay of Biscay, often as brutal as any Southern Ocean crossing. It will certainly be uncomfortable sailing, but no time to ease off the throttle and avoid breakages. Nervous times for Ian Walker, ahead by 6 points, but the contest is far from won. Mathematically, both Team Brunel and Dongfeng race team can still claim overall victory.
You know, it's just a short sprint, and you just know you have to be 100% power on, and you can't just slacken down any moment. Like in previous legs, probably you can just say, okay, we relax a little bit, the conditions are really easy going. The guys can have a full watch sleep, and this time it will be probably guys hiking and we're doing all kind of crazy things to get first in Lorient because it's so short.
For Frenchman Charles Caudrelier, arriving first in Lorient would be a perfect homecoming, but more importantly, this leg represents a chance for the Chinese team to reel in Abu Dhabi Ocean Racing and keep their dreams of victory alive.
I think we have no choice on the future leg. We have to beat him and to beat Mafre and everybody also, so because they are not so far also. And we still have a chance to come back also on Abu Dhabi, so it's simple.
And no time for complacency from Ian Walker, who refuses to underestimate the competition.
I've seen Admiral's Cups lost in the dying seconds. We're a long, long way from winning this race, and I think it's when you start to think like that you start to lose. So I'd prefer to not even look at the scores, and you know, we got a lot of race left, and I think these guys know that they've still got plenty of chance to beat us in this race.
Leg 8 looks set to be a fascinating contest with Abu Dhabi Ocean Racing out in front by 6 points, but two teams ready to attack. Now, Richard, you know Ian Walker pretty well. How's he going to be feeling in this situation?
He's going to be feeling the pressure. He's going to be calling on all that Olympic experience he's got to turn that pressure into performance. Everyone's breathing down his neck. He's got everything to lose. Everyone else has got everything to gain. So he's just going to have to keep doing what he did yesterday and keep performing in this regatta.
Now, the 700-mile dash to Lorient, it's shorter than what we've seen before in this edition, but strong winds forecast and upwind sailing, it's going to be uncomfortable.
It's going to be uncomfortable and intense because we're back to coastal racing. They're going to be sailing up the Spanish and Portuguese coastlines. It's like a 300-mile beat up there, working the inside. It's going to be import racing, but for the next 4 days.
Now, as we've seen here in Lisbon, the intensity is certainly firing between the teams, and it's safe to say that out on the water, it will be anything but aggressive sailing.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the pressure cooker it's full. It's ready to go. It's all going to be coming out. Who's going to take the risks? Who's going to push the limits? I think you know, we're going to see crosses dipping going on here. It's going to be super tight.
Well, as leg 8 looks set to begin, let's take a look at the overall scoreboard. Team SCA, Mafre and Dongfeng all awarded penalties for infringements on leg 7, which has created some dramatic movement in the scoreboard. Abu Dhabi Ocean Racing now 6 points clear of Team Brunel and Dongfeng, who are all square on 22 points. Behind them, Alvi Medica and Mafre are also tied after 7 legs. So once again, the Import Series deciding the final places in the overall rankings.
Oh, say
As the fleet prepared to leave the race village, the crowd swelled to the dockside as the crews made their final preparations and farewells. And Richard, how important is this show of support to the sailors?
Oh, family binds everything. As a crew member, you've got to have your family with you. If you know you've got their support, then you can deliver that last little bit on the racetrack. The Volvo race asks as much from the families as it does from the crews.
And of course, a lot of pride at stake here. Ian Walker saying that he wanted to win this race to almost show to his kids and wanted to be able to make them real swell with pride when they think about their father. A big moment for all of these sailors.
Well, he wants to leave a legacy for his family, and that's what this race is all about. It creates legacies. There's no prize money, it's all pride.
And a lot of rivalry at stake. We've got Mafre and Alvi Medica neck and neck in the points, and of course up at the front of the rankings, Abu Dhabi Ocean Racing, Team Brunel and Dongfeng Race Team all vying for that top spot.
Oh, the rivalry is just going to be like nothing else. We saw two neck and neck finishes yesterday, and that's all that's going to happen over the next 4 days. It's going to be a lot of lead changes, loads of pressure. It's going to be all on. Very exciting.
Plenty of tension for the racing today. It's going to certainly be a fantastic day of action out on the water as we get ever closer to that final in Sweden. As the teams take to the water, let's take a closer look at the 7 skippers in this year's race. Charles Caudrelier can see Abu Dhabi Ocean Racing just in arm's length at the top of the leaderboard, and the Frenchman is ready to capitalise on every mistake their rivals make. Sam Davies, skipper of the all-female Team SCA, has one goal in mind for the last 2 legs. Prove how much her team has learnt from the last 40,000 miles of racing. The shorter legs ahead could be her opportunity. Bauer Becking, the Dutch Volvo Ocean Race veteran, has moved to 2nd place in both the import and offshore series, but he doesn't want to stop there. This leg will see him fight hard for the win. Charlie Enright, our youngest skipper, will be leaving Lisbon knowing he is tied on points with Mafre, and this next result needs to be strong. British Olympian Ian Walker can see the trophy just coming into view, but one slip up on this leg could let the Chinese and Dutch teams frighteningly close to denying his victory. Chris Nicholson, skipper of Team Vestas Wind, is back on the water with a repaired boat and motivated crew. Can they overcome the lack of sailing time and claim some winning scores? Double Olympic medalist Xavi Fernandez is in charge of the Spanish boat into Europe. The team has had a roller coaster ride in Lisbon, being forced to carry a penalty point after arrivals and winning yesterday's import race. On the water is Volvo Ocean Race CEO Knut Frostad. Knut, light winds for the start of leg 8?
Well, it's looking pretty light behind me. The good news for the sailors is that the current hasn't changed yet. So the current is, as you can see on the start boat, it's still running out. And that's the good news for the start. Yesterday was very difficult to start when the current is starting to flow in, because it's so easy to be over early, you know, and that happened to a Team SCA. Right now, we see that the current is running out still, so we will have a easier start for the sailors. But it's a win. I mean, it's not like it's nothing, because there is breeze here. I think it's a little bit more west in it, so a bit more side wind. And I think that most of them are prepared with their Coast Zeros, so they are setting up for a kind of a reach, and we're going to go all the way into Lisbon, under the famous Lisbon Bridge, and all the way into the city, round 2 marks at the city, and then all the way out again through the start line. So no, I think we will have good sailing all the way. It looks promising so far, and the forecast is that we're going to see an increasing breeze during the afternoon, and obviously then they will leave Portugal, and we're going to talk later about what they're going to face further up north, which can be quite tough for them.
Well, thanks, Knut. Let's have a little bit of a look at that weather forecast. As Knut said, it is a little bit light, and actually down on the water we've almost got opposing breezes across the racecourse. Forecast says westerly breeze, 6 knots, plenty of temperature to enjoy out here, but very taxing conditions for the tacticians.
Yeah, it's going to be very difficult to pick their way down underneath the bridge here. Big geographical feature in this, and as Knut referred to there, the committee boat at the moment is hanging into the tide, but once there will be a tidal change as they go around the bottom marks, and the tide will start flooding in, which just means they're going to be quite a long trip for them out towards Cascais there as they exit out from Lisbon.
Well, as the start clock is beginning to count down, let's have a look at the course that begins this leg all the way to Lorient in France. A downwind start from the start line will take the boat underneath the Tack bridge. That's a gate as far as the sailing instructions are concerned before heading down to that bottom mark. Starboard roundings for today's import section, 2 marks at the bottom of the course, up once again underneath the bridge before passing between the start line again. Once they go through that start line, they are then on the ocean part of this race. They can start to use their outriggers and they can get rid of their jumpers as well. After that, it's on north along the coast and a long dash, upwind, hard slog. We've got to avoid those traffic separation schemes. We saw that play a lot in leg 7.
Yeah, we did, and they played in the points as well, so we're going to have to be careful how they manage those. Forecast for Cape Finisterre, upwards of 40 knots. Bay of Biscay has a lot of nicknames, but it's very capable of breaking boats and crews, so they're going to have to manage that very carefully. Forecast for the breeze to drop down to around about 20 knots as they come and finish into Lorient, so there's an awful lot that can happen.
Would you care to predict just how close that finish is going to be in Lorient? I mean, we've seen some very close finishes here in this leg. It's a short one.
Well, yes, and there's going to be a lot of local knowledge coming into play here because, of course, we've got Maffrey, who know the Spanish coastline very well. We have Sam Davies, who spent most of her career sailing out of that area of France, and, of course, Charles de Gaudier and Dong Fong. You know, that's half French. That's these guys' back garden. So I think it's going to be super, super close as they come in there.
Well, it's interesting that you talk about that local knowledge because, of course, Alvi Mediger have sailed in this area a little more than other people. And Canute, I was just wondering, what sort of tactics do you think we're going to see really playing out for this start?
Well, I think this is one of the starts in the race which is actually very important. I mean, sometimes you can argue, does it really matter to win the start with a boat length or 2? But, you know, they're going to work themselves north of Lisbon afterwards into more and more breeze. And if you can beat the weather of the fleet, beating yourself up there, it is clearly a big advantage. So I think they will all try really, really hard to win it. I think we will see some learning from yesterday. You know, yesterday there was quite a few boats that ended up too close to the committee boat, and they couldn't actually work themselves down to the line. And then you have a boat to leeward of you, then you are completely squeezed out. What happened to Vestas, for example, at the start. So my guess is we will see more boats closer to the pin end mark. Brunel did a really good start down there yesterday, and I think we will see more boats there because you have a lee boat, your leeward boat, you have an advantage rule-wise, you have a slightly tighter angle, which is good when the wind is dropping, and as they're expecting the wind to be less further in, you want to beat the leeward. That's when you can burn speed by pushing the boat a little bit harder and coming up. So I also look at the start line now, it looks slightly biased with the pin mark, so I think we will see most of the boats trying to work themselves close to the Lisbon shoreline, where we have thousands of spectators I'm looking at right now.
Well, so Richard, the tide's definitely going to come into effect here, but one thing I keep seeing from those images, is it going to be A3 or is it going to be code 0? Which masthead sail are you going to use?
Well, at the moment they've got the zeros up and set, but I see all the A3s are plugged in and hanging over the bows, and of course they're using the smaller jibs in the start area just mostly for manoeuvring, because when the boats get down speed you need to be able to back your jib sometimes to get the bow to come down. You see Vestas doing that right now. They'll hang on to the jib and that'll help blow the bow down, and then they'll cut it over, so you can't do that with the bigger sails. So what we'll see once they get on the final approach in the last 40 seconds here, big sails will start to get unfurled and it'll be all about boat speed and positioning as they head for the line. Plenty of jostling going on here at the moment. Alpha Medica tucked in nicely under Dongfang. It's going to be a busy start, but we're a little bit further back from the line, but it's going to be close.
There's the start line you can see in the middle of your screen there, the boats on their final approach. Light and tricky conditions dominating the start here. The start for all 7 teams back on the water. Too light for the A3. It's the code 0 is the sail of choice, and the timing now coming down to the last few seconds. Team Brunel getting the best of the start on the windward end. Maffrey also with a good start down the pin, and the race for leg 8 has begun.
A very nice start by both those boats there. Their bows came down just as the flag dropped and straight onto those code 0s. It looks like very reaching conditions there. Crucial times here for the boats in the middle there as they try and inch themselves forward and get into clear air. Vestas in a bit of a tricky spot there as they're sitting in the dirty air from SCA and Brunel.
Does this show us just how close the racing will be by the time we get to the finish, because Mafre and Team Brunel, they were really pushing that start line, and as we saw yesterday with your boat, Team SEA, if you're over the line with this difficult tide running you down the course, it's a big penalty.
Yeah, it's expensive, but again, if you're 4 or 5 boat lengths back, that's expensive too. So you know, it's almost one of those ones where every now and then you just think, well, I'd rather be over once every now and then, and you're pushing it and you're in the game, as opposed to, you know, being out the back door.
Mafre making the best of the course at the moment, down at the leeward end. Team Brunel up to windward. Alvi Medica just rolling over the top of Abu Dhabi Ocean Racing. The battle for second place here very much split between 4 boats.
Yeah, a bit of a drag race going on out here at the moment in crucial times. So Mafre, they really now have to advance forward on the fleet, and then they can start working up across their lines, and that'll sort of put them in a nice, powerful position. You'll see them come up on the Alpha Medica's line here, and they can start controlling the boats behind them. This is a classic case of you know, the rich get richer as you get forward. But remembering at the moment, the talk in our earpieces is that there is a bit of a conflicting breeze under the bridge, so plenty of changes to come here.
Well, Canute, that was a very punchy start from 2 of the teams, and as we sail down towards the bridge, what do we think the breeze is going to do to this?
Well, I think the forecast, or what we have of information right now, is that it's less wind at the other side of the bridge and almost at a different wind direction. But you know, I like Mafre's position. They have that leeward position I spoke about before the start, and they can just squeeze themselves up now and basically leave everyone else behind them. And they have a lot of distance to burn. We see SEA and Abu Dhabi and Vestas are really much spit out of the fleet there behind. They have no chance really, because now they're in the dirty air and they're going to have to sit in that dirty air. There's nowhere to go. You know, it's not like it is a downwind. You can jibe your way out of it. You're really stuck there, and you just have to accept and wait until they're so far in front of you that you get clean air. Very painful start for Abu Dhabi there and Vestas and even SEA. Well, I think Abu Dhabi probably have the worst position, because they're down to leeward as well, so they have to sail higher in very, very distorted air.
Well, there's the spectator fleet on the water, everybody coming out, everybody taking the day to enjoy the action on the water. And the main rivalry that all these people will be interested in is Abu Dhabi Ocean Racing, Dongfeng and Team Brunel. Up at the front of the fleet, those 3 boats are battling it out hard. The other main rivalry, we've got Alvi Medica and Mafre, who are at the moment in this race right next to each other.
It's all to play for out here, and the intensity is going to get. It's going to get more and more as you get out of here, because like Canute was alluding to, once you get around Cascais, the lead boats are going to get into more pressure. So it's a case of the rich get richer. And certainly as you go up this coastline, exiting up the Portugal coast, you're going to be wanting the inside. There's going to be long starboards and short ports, and you're going to be wanting to control the boats outside you as you go up there. Leading out of here is going to be a key factor in how the next 24 hours play out.
Looking at the shuffle here of the shuffle of these boats, I'm almost surprised that Team Brunel hasn't managed to roll Alvi Medica in that position. Alvi Medica doing a great job hanging on there.
Yeah, exactly. They're doing a nice job weaving their way up just a little bit to the weather of Mafre's line there, and it looks like there's a little bit of pressure in front of them, which is enabling them to sort of just extend it out.
Well, they're not laying the first gate, which will be the bridge in this import section of the race. Mafre leading at the moment, but the boats will have to jibe unless they can find some new breeze that heads them down there. Canute, how's it look on the water?
Well, Abu Dhabi just jibed. I mean, I was just talking about the painful position that Ian Walker was in, and now he decided to jibe because he had some water to jibe in. He can basically work himself all the way into the coast, but that's going to be a painful maneuver. I mean, that's a big loss to take early, and obviously at some stage the leading boats will have to jibe as well. But currently they're not, as we call, laying the mark. They're not having a course that takes them down to the gate. So they're going to have to jibe most likely way before that big bridge we are facing. But it's good breeze there, it's good pressure. They're all having reasonably nice speed. I think SEA and Vestas have nicely worked themselves up to a line now where they have clean air. They're not really disturbed anymore to the same level, so they will keep their positions there. And I guess the boats that are most in risk at the moment is Alvi Medica and Dongfeng, that can be squeezed by Mafre. But at the same time now, that Mafre don't want to squeeze too high, I think, because they have to work themselves downwind at some stage.
So, Richard, Abu Dhabi Ocean Racing electing to jibe out and sail over there. Do you think that's pressure? Do you think that's tide?
Well, I think it's just Ian's, he's looking for another avenue, because if you look at the angle of these boats, they're headed at this weather coastline. Now remember, the breeze is sort of coming up from the bottom of your screen over the other side. That's a high side up there, so you could find there's some pretty nasty wind holes as the wind comes over the land and falls down on the water. You can see the shot behind you here. You look in these bays, it's very glassy. As you come into here, you have to be very careful. Now, what Ian might be able to do is have a more consistent breeze on the other side. He might find an avenue to get down. So you'll watch all these boats coming in here, getting lighter, picking your time to jibe out. It's going to be crucial. Mafre will have to be very careful as to what time they pick to lead out.
And what are they looking for out there? I mean, as Bauer Becking here takes the boat right in close to that shore, are they looking for the funnels of breeze?
Yeah, I mean, he'll be looking ahead of him, sort of thinking, right, I can see a hole forming up here. You see the dark patches in front of him at the moment. That's breeze. And then you'll see these glassy patches just a bit further up on the screen. That's not breeze. So you've got to be pretty careful that you don't go into that and then decide to jibe. You need to jibe out before you get in there. But of course, he's got other boats to think about. So.
Well, Canute, we're wondering how long we've got until these boats start to jibe out. And as I say that, Team SCA and Team Vestas Wind both jibing out. Canute, do you think that was the right move?
Well, I think so. I think what we're seeing right here where I am, I'm with Brunel, and the wind is just starting to drop. You can see the boats are sailing higher and higher and higher. So it both a shift and less wind. So hopefully for Abu Dhabi it's just less wind, because that means that you're going to gain on the other side. And I think Vestas, when you see them in that jibe, they have very little wind in the jibe, and I think they're going to point way behind Abu Dhabi there. So it could have been a good move by Ian Walker to get himself on the Lisbon shoreline. We saw yesterday, every time someone got too close to the side where we are now with Brunel, they lost a lot. There was a lot less pressure. So my gut feeling is that it's more wind on the Lisbon side, and that you want to work yourself over to that side.
Mafre leading the fleet as the boats jibe back into the deepest part of the river. Alvi Medica chasing hard, yet to pop the battens in their main. Behind them, Dongfeng Race Team and Team Brunel all coming out of that lighter wind area. So the big question is this change of direction that we're seeing, is it shift or is it pressure?
Well, there's a couple of factors. I think tide's starting to come into play here, and I don't know why, but in most countries in the world where you have a lot of tide, if there's going to be a bit of a wind change, it tends to happen as the tide turns. And I think as time goes by here, we're going to see the flood start coming. So it means two things. So in the middle of the racetrack where Mafre are now, they're going to have more current with them, pushing them down towards the bridge. But it's also going to mean once they turn around the bottom and come out, that their boats are going to be hunting to get over to the sides and out of the tide as much as they can. It's going to take a long time for them to sail out of Lisbon.
Well, Mafre now looking very nice with a 100 and almost 30 metre lead over Alvi Medica. Abu Dhabi Ocean Racing coming back over now on starboard jibe. So we'll wait to see exactly how they come into the pack. Team SEA going to be the first boat. We're going to get a little bit of a cross here. Have they gained on this? They were around about 4th, 5th place. They're going to be in front of Team Vestas Wind, but Team SEA, that's the big decider.
It is a big decider in how they're going to manage and play Abu Dhabi here, or how Abu Dhabi are going to manage. They've just jibed actually, so obviously Ian wants to defend that side. He's going to unfurl there and try and put his bad air into Vestas, which means SCA can stay a little bit clear and maybe push a little bit further down to that side. I think we'll see them playing the left-hand side, of course, a bit more.
Now that's a very carefully placed jibe, because Team Vestas are coming in with plenty of power there. Almost looked to me like they were going to be able to roll over the top of them. So Abu Dhabi Ocean Racing very definitely wanting that left-hand side as you look downwind. Canute, do you think they've got that one right? Which side of this course is going to pay?
Well, I think it's like we just heard about, the current is about to change, and I think we will see some big changes in wind direction and as well current on the race course now, because the three boats behind SCA, Abu Dhabi and Vestas are almost separating from the first four here. It's like the distance is growing very, very fast, and I tend to believe that there is a current change right now, and it's actually turning earlier further forward, so that Mafre and Alvi Medica is in a more favorable place, because it's quite amazing how much separation is stretching now. It's really stretching very, very, very fast.
Well, Mafre certainly look like they've made the best of the first part of this race. They are out in the lead and getting good speed as well. And we saw this yesterday, didn't we, Richard? They really seem to be able to unlock the secrets of this racecourse.
Yes, they do, and I'm sure there's plenty of these boys who have done a lot of sailing around here. Interesting thing with the tide is it changes on the edges first. So that could also be why you're seeing these guys on the edge of the race course getting nice gains at the moment, especially on this side. It's much deeper on the other side. So on the shallower sides, on the edges, that's where your tide change will start. So it's probably why Ian's quite keen to keep defending that. But that won't be eventually it'll work its way into the middle, and the main flow will be in the middle of the racetrack.
All the fleet now making their way over to the northern side of the river, maybe trying to get that first bit of tide that's flowing and pulling them down towards the bridge. Mafre still out in the lead with a fairly healthy margin. However, behind them and chasing hard, the young Turkish and American team. And this is a major rivalry that we're seeing here. In the rankings, both these teams are tied on point. In fact, it's only the import results that split it and put Alvi Medica in front. So the results from this leg will have a big effect.
It'll have an enormous effect, and it'll be very interesting to see how the experience plays out as they go up the coast, because Mafre should have a very good advantage as they come up around Sensienko, which is in the northern part of Spain there, and that's where they've been training out of, and most of these guys are based from, so that should come into play for them as they get into battle coming around the corner.
Mafre still leading and still sailing towards that northern shore. Abu Dhabi Ocean Racing, the boat closest to the shore. Team Brunel chasing this pack of the first three boats, and Dongfeng Race Team, they had a particularly bad day yesterday, but they're making quite a good run of it at the moment, currently lying in third place. And Charles Cordrelia and his team, they will be desperate to start this leg 8, with a good run.
Well, yeah, and finish it, I'm sure, because we'll be coming into their hometown. So they've proven that they've got it there, and it's all going to be about keeping it together. But both these boats are they could mathematically get it in. So you will see these two being the two main rivals for Ian to cover, and then they won't be letting anybody past if they don't have to.
We're about halfway down to the first gate, which is the bridge over the Tagus River, before heading further down to those last few buoys and then coming round to starboard. Abu Dhabi Ocean Racing, the first boat that will reach the northern shore, and there we will see whether this tide has had a big effect on them. They were the first boat to jibe off, the first boat to gamble, and now we see them jibing back. Do you think that's a little bit of pressure coming their way, or maybe they've just decided the depth is enough?
You know, you can see they're sort of getting closer to the edges there, and they're probably seeing a little bit of pressure and trying to find a good angle to pick at to come as they approach the bridge. So they're going to have to start managing those two main pylons of the bridge there, because they're actually a gate, and how to best make the use to get pressure coming in.
What a perfect place to sail, as well as Abu Dhabi Ocean Racing just peel past the Monument of Discoveries, 1960s monument, and really signifying Lisbon here. I mean, this is a town that started some major voyages back in the golden age of discoveries and sailing, and quite fitting for the Volvo Ocean Race to be racing just here.
Yeah, nautically an iconic town to be based out of, and you certainly feel it as you move around some of the older structures in Lisbon. You really feel that this is a place that's had a long association with the sea, and you feel pretty at home here as a sailor.
How much how much speed do we lose for these boats jibing? Because I'm almost surprised we're not seeing more jibes down this northern side, if that's where the tide is at its best.
Well, they're quite expensive. The boat speed will drop down 3 to 4 knots, or probably down to about 4 knots as you come through the jibe. It's all about how you manage the turn. But no, the manoeuvres in these conditions are expensive no matter what their manoeuvre is, and you want to keep those to a minimum.
Well, Mafre still out in the lead, being chased by Alvi Medica. Rob Greenhouse, the British sailor, on the helm, and he was brought in quite late in this boat's campaign. In fact, they'd already completed a couple of legs. They weren't satisfied with the results that they've got. They pulled in a heavyweight like Rob Greenhouse, who has plenty of years of experience in the Volvo and other racing as well. How much of an effect does someone like that have coming into the team?
Oh, I think Rob has a lot of effect. It's not only his knowledge but his intensity. You know, he's a fierce competitor, and what he brings to the table is he's got an eye for detail. He's certainly very happy to drive a boat extremely hard, and he's got experience of winning the race, and he was a wash captain in the previous race, so it brings a lot of certainty to the team, and he can make pretty clear calls.
And for this team as well, they really have had a very mixed bag here in Lisbon. They got that penalty after finish on leg 7, and they certainly didn't feel that was particularly justified, but they went out on the water and then they won the import race yesterday, so quite a big recovery mentally for them.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, that's what this whole Volvo race is all about. You know, putting the tough times behind you or turning the tough times into good times. You know, it's all about being focused on the future, and that's what every sailor out there will be doing today, I'm sure.
And Team SCA there on the right-hand side of your picture, just in risk of losing a bit of breeze to Abu Dhabi Ocean Racing, who are trying to turn that tactical maneuver they did earlier into something good. They haven't quite gained in there. They were lying about 4th position, maybe 5th position. They're now back in 6th at the moment. So an early decision from Ian Walker that hasn't quite played out, and that's just what the Frenchman on board Dongfeng Race Team will want to see. Charles Cordrelia has firmly made it his mission to beat Abu Dhabi Ocean Racing in this edition.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he's got his mission to beat every other boat on the racetrack, I'm sure. But interesting. I got a sneaky feeling, though, that this lead that they have here, once you get around these bottom marks and start getting out of here, is going to be, it's going to mean a lot. It could actually quite easy for lead boats to get out of here and other boats behind by over a very small distance to get stuck in some of these light. You see up top of the screen here, it's very light in the bay up there, and they've got to sail through that area to get out.
And we're sailing in light winds at the moment, but of course we are waiting as the clock ticks down for this big breeze to come in, and as the boats leave Lisbon, it's going to be strong winds ahead. Yeah,
so they come out around the corner. The forecast for tonight is pretty light, but as they start working their way up the coast, you know, the winds will build upwards of 20 knots, and eventually they'll be in a solid 30 to 35 knots off Cape Finisterre, which normally means 40 knots and change. It's not the most pleasant part of the world to be going upwind, and if it's rough, I can assure you.
Well, before the teams reach that lovely 30 knots and really going to power the boats forward, they have to contend with this light breeze as they make their way down to the first gate. Very difficult conditions here, and Canute, you're on the water. What's the breeze doing as we near the first mark?
Well, I think still the breeze is pretty sustained. It's pretty strong. I mean, no, it's not strong, but it's solid. And I think we are seeing a change in the current, and we saw that yesterday. We saw that we had these huge angle changes on the water. You know, suddenly boats could sail a lot lower than before, and I think Alvimedica has done a pretty good run here now. The last sort of 5-10 minutes, they've been slowly catching up on Mafre by sailing a little bit lower, and it seems like Mafre joined maybe a little late. I'm still scared about this. The height of land on this side of the racetrack, you know, the right side of the racetrack when you look down the racetrack. And I think Mafre maybe went a little far there, but obviously now you see Alvimedica protected and jibed earlier, jibed back to the other side, and maybe they did that for a reason, that they felt they made a gain, and it must be because Mafre sailed into less breeze. But we still see a solid wind all the way down. I think when the current starts changing here and basically starts running in, you can imagine if the first boat gets pretty far out before the strongest current sets in, they will start stretching big time on the fleet. So I agree with Richard. This start could be leg deciding.
Well, that's a perfect shot there just to signify how patchy this breeze is. On the left-hand side of the screen towards the top, you can see that darker area starting to come down towards the right bottom corner. It's looking very light indeed, and Team Brunel out on the right starting to look a little strong.
Yeah, they're looking a little bit stronger there, but the mark they're going to have to go through is sort of dead downwind of Alvimedica at the moment, so they've got a little bit further to sail. But I still think it's very much any man's game out there at the moment, because as you get underneath the bridge here, it's going to get lighter and lighter, and they're restricted to have to go through that area. They run sort of, you don't have options to sail wherever you want to, so you're sort of having to sail through a bit of a funnel there, so to speak. So we could see everyone concertina up a little bit as we come down the racetrack.
And these boats are jibing through big angles as we go downwind. That makes it quite difficult to stay in these funnels of breeze, because as soon as you're in, you know, you think, oh, fantastic, you jibe and you just pop straight back out.
Oh, exactly. It's very difficult to manage these conditions, and you're still trying to soak down as well because the gains are down to leeward. So I see something I noticed that Alvimedica have a very nice VMG mode at the moment, so it's this velocity made good, and for those that are at home, it really means that you're able to go forward as much as you can down.
Well, there is the Spanish boat Mafre currently in the lead, and Richard, just off the back of the boat you can just see the wet exhaust coming out, signifying that they've got the engine running, and that's all to do with powering the keel, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. So there's two ways of powering the keel. You have a DC pump, which makes the keel move slowly, and then there's a PTO pump, which is basically a pump that's driven by the main engine, which moves the oil around, which moves the keel. Now in these conditions, you're looking for an optimum keel angle the whole time. So you see the helmsman putting their hands over to this little white box in front of them, and there's 2 buttons where you can trim the keel up and down and up and down. They'll be moving that the whole time.
And then offshore, you don't have to have the engine running, do you? You've got electronic, you've got hydraulics. You can have either option.
Yeah, exactly. Offshore, when light winds, you actually use it quite a lot. But when you're in sort of more consistent breezes, upwards of 10 knots, you'll move the keel into position, which is the main one, and you'll lock it off. And you just top it up every now and then with a DC pump, because they do drop down. They have relief valves in them, so if they get overloaded, it'll just drop a little bit and not overload the structure of the boat.
So as these boats sailing inshore, maybe crew even down below when it gets light like this, the engine running, it's going to be pretty loud and hot down there.
Oh, it's very loud and hot. It's nothing that's comfortable about being downstairs on these boats, I can assure you. And if it's in sleeping conditions, if it's that light, all the gear's in the very front of the boat, and the crew are on top of the gear. There's no getting in your bunks.
Well, there you can see the Tangoose River Bridge. That signifies the first gate. The boats starting to narrow into them. Breeze looking a little bit better in places. Maffrey now jibing to follow the rest of the fleet, heading down to the southern side. And those code zeros are certainly starting to fill, but how much breeze are we going to see before we can change to the A3?
I think you're going to need to see consistently upwards of 6 to 8 knots before the A3s will really come into play. More 8 knots. Because with these sails you can keep the apparent wind angle more forward. It's easy to attach it. So it looks like Dongfeng and Brunel have got a nice little puff there, and you'll see them start working down towards the Alpha Medica and they're going to have to work up to try and defend themselves. So everything's concertinaing up as we get to the bridge here. It's going to get closer and closer.
From this shot here, it does not look like it's going to work out for Maffrey and Alvi Medica. Dongfeng Race Team and Team Brunel right in the middle of your picture. Just got a little bit of a puff there, and we're really able to bury the bow down and soak down onto the top 2 boats. Team SCA as well coming down with Abu Dhabi Ocean Racing behind them. So those little puffs rolling down the race course, they're benefiting the boats behind.
Well, it's going to be really interesting to see how they manage the bridge here, because for all of those non-sailors at home, you can imagine there's just a massive windbreak sitting across this flow of air that's making it tumble and turn and twist, and that becomes a difficult thing for the sailors to manage. So where's a good spot to get through and where is the wind and isn't. You sort of got to really feel your way through it.
Team Brunel, light breeze with the code 0 stacked on top of Dongfeng Race Team. Each of these boats just trying to claim each other's breeze, and Maffrey now catching that gust as their bow starts moving forward. So a narrow escape for the Spaniards.
Very narrow escape. Interesting thing to note here, sort of like the boats are doing about 8.2 knots. And I'd say they're actually going slightly faster than the wind at the moment, which is it's a hard thing to comprehend. You've probably got about 6 to 7 knots of wind pushing them, coming through the sails. But as the boats move forward, you can actually get them to sail slightly faster than the wind, which is all the trick about sailing downwind, because it tends to want you to make sail higher and higher and go faster and faster, but you've got to be able to take that little bit of speed and then push it down, so you end up going towards the mark that you want to go to.
Maffrey around 400 metres away from crossing underneath the bridge, just managing to keep themselves out of that opposing wind shadow coming down from Dongfeng and Team Brunel. Looking at the top of the screen there is some light wind, so the Spaniards have to make some difficult decisions here. When are they going to jibe?
Oh, it's going to come back into managing the geographical effects on the other side of the bridge. It's so high there, so you're going to want to have to defend a little bit.
Well, after they go underneath the bridge here, Gate 1, you can see Mark 2 and Mark 3 in the distance, continuing to go downwind, starboard rounding round both of those marks, and then the difficult upwind slog against the tide.
Yes, I don't think we'll see them changing sails. They'll stay on the code 0, so it's quite a nice thing for the crew, because your downwind sail becomes your upwind sail. There's no sail change required. But of course that means that it's going to be very light, and short tacking these sails is very difficult.
Maffrey jibe still in the lead of this fleet. Alvi Medica chasing them hard. We've seen that lead far bigger, so the young American team doing a good job to keep the Spaniards within range.
Yes, they're doing a wonderful job. They seem to have a very nice mode in these conditions, which is allowing them just to keep closing gauge on the boats in front of them. Interesting thing to see here, Vestas have struggling a little bit in these conditions, and I think that's probably just a sign of these other crews having spent so much time sailing on these boats in these light airs, tricky conditions. So they've probably just got a little bit of an edge there as to know what modes to put the boats in straight away.
Well, Knut, the big question is, what's the breeze going to do after the boats sail underneath the bridge?
Well, I'm right under the bridge right now. I'm looking at the other side. You can see the breeze is at least for quite some distance. It's pretty solid. But then when you kind of get more into open areas, it looks like it's a completely different thing. It looks very patchy. And I'm still looking at some small cruising boats down there, which seems to have a sails filled from a different direction. So I think we can be up to some big surprises at the bottom.
And Knut, what's the current like at the moment? Because we're expecting that current to really start to kick in.
Well, I am actually not able to see that right now. I'm on a rib, which is no references, so I'm trying to look around, but hard to tell. But one thing is for sure, it's a little bit of a compression happening between Mapfre and the others, and they are sailing a lot higher on port jibe now than they did before. So they're really almost 90 degrees to the channel here, going back to the other side.
Well, as the breeze starts getting light as these boats try to sail underneath that bridge and down to those bottom marks, of course the tide is going to start to pull them down there. But if the breeze really starts getting too light, it's a strong current they've got to fight against on the way back up.
Oh, exactly. I mean, to a certain extent, the current's going to help you no matter what in this direction. As long as you can keep the boat roughly moving where you want it to go, you're going to end up getting pushed down to these marks. But managing getting out of here, the initial part of the beat, once they round these marks down here and which side they choose to go out. Now, I remember that from the last race, the city side paid big time, if I remember rightly. So it was all about getting over to the Lisbon side of the river there and trying to pick a good time to cross over and get through under the main pylon and back over to that side. But we'll see how it pans out today. It's going to be very tricky.
Well, having sailed back over to the northern edge of this bridge, Mapfre now jibe to cross underneath. And the key question is going to be, what breeze are they in store for? As they sail underneath the spans of this enormous bridge, it's quite high above the mast, but it will make an effect. On the other side of this bridge, are they just going to sit in a massive wind hole?
Well, it'll be interesting. Also, the other thing is that this bridge sort of goes from point to point. There's a bit of quite a high geographical effect on the southern side of it. So the breeze may change as it swings round that sort of geographical feature on the other side. But pretty nice shot there of them going underneath the bridge.
And what we're used to seeing with these boats with the Code Zero is the outriggers helping the trimmers to get the Code Zeros in just the right position. But for import section of the offshore leg, not allowed to use the outriggers.
Yes, that's correct. So you're not allowed to use those until you go past the leaving mark, which is the last recognisable mark of what we'll see today. And basically, once you're in the open sea, you can start to use those.
And what sort of a difference does it make? I mean, would they be... Oh, now look at these angles here we can see on the virtual eye. Mapfre on a really nice line now. That breeze has really swung round. They're not going to be laying those bottom marks, but they're making a good effort towards them.
Yeah, it's sort of played in their favour, a little bit of a shift there, which is allowing them to get their bows down as they come down underneath the bridge. Still super, super light though, and I'm sure it'll be a bit tricky as we get down towards Mark 2 and 3.
Alvi Medica in second place, chasing down the Spanish boat. Dongfeng Race Team in third at the moment. Are we surprised at the moment to see Abu Dhabi Ocean Racing that far back?
No, I don't think so. They just got stuck in a couple of spots. We saw it yesterday. They struggled to get out of the right-hand side of the racetrack, and then all of a sudden they were back. So there's an awful lot to play for here, and I still think we're going to see a couple of park-ups. Where the boats are going to compress together in lighter spots before they get out of here.
But with the finishes predicted to be coming down to potentially under a minute. I mean, with the finishes that we've seen in this race, on leg 1 we had a 12-minute finish, which seemed almost unbelievable, and on the leg 6 we had a 3-minute difference between Dongfeng Race Team and Abu Dhabi Ocean Racing. Coming into leg 7 we had 21 minutes, which seemed almost enormous in comparison. Now we're down to these much shorter, compressed offshore legs. Starting this race behind, you've got to be worried about the finish already.
Well, I don't know if they'll be worried about it right now, but I mean, you saw it in the press conference there with Bauer's comments. They're going to be doing absolutely everything they can. They're not going to be sleeping. They'll be sitting on the rail. There's an old trick there with the guys. You sit on the rail and you put a sail tie behind your back so you can lean back against it and sleep while you're up there. Anything they do to get riding moment into the boats that's still movable, they'll be doing it. So everything that they do right now, they know could affect the outcome of what happens coming into Lorient. So these guys, the intensity levels are going to be super high over the next 4 days.
Well, Mafre underneath the bridge, Alvi Medica and Dongfeng behind them, and as Team Brunel also crossed down the bridge, Canute, what does it look like for this next long stretch all the way down to those bottom marks?
Well, it looked like a fantastic lane for Mapfre there in the beginning. They were really, pointing very, very low, but that didn't last for very long. I mean, I think you have these patches of breeze that are coming through, and then they got lifted again, the wind dropped, they sail higher, they jibe back, now they're jibing back towards the Lisbon side. So looking down, if I had to guess and I had to a gun to my head, which I guess these guys have, I would have probably chosen the city side. I think it just feels like it's darker on the water, and I can see Brunel actually chose to jibe right after the bridge. That's a pretty gutsy move, because even though that bridge is high up, it's certainly going to affect the breeze. I mean, to stay so long to leeward of that bridge, this is a bit surprising, but that means that Bowie Becking and his team is very convinced that there is more pressure on the Lisbon side, and they went for that early rather than late.
Yeah, well, that was certainly the side that paid in the previous races that I've done here, and it was always a bit of a race to get there. Nice to see SCA just coming through under the bridge here as well. Fantastic shot. Be interesting to see whether they cross their line and go in, or whether they follow them in there as well.
Abu Dhabi Ocean Racing currently lying in 6th place towards the back of this fleet. The only boat behind them, Team Vestas Wind. So Ian Walker will be desperate to try and find the best of the breeze and get back into this competition. And there's no room for Ian Walker to be able to calm down. He said that this race is still losable, refusing to even consider the opportunity to win in Sweden. This is somebody who's been trying to win the Volvo Ocean Race for many editions. I mean, this is a big moment for him.
It's a very big moment, and he knows it, and he's right on the edge of it. But I think his approach is the right one, and complacency could be the killer here. And he's got his guys on his toes. It's much more difficult to stay at the top when you're on the top than being number 2, taking risks at getting him off the podium. So there's a lot of pressure on him, but he's got a lot of Olympic experience to draw upon, and America's Cup experience to keep the nerves calm and just play the cards as they come to hand.
And they've had a small crew change on board Abu Dhabi Ocean Racing. Adil Khalid, the Emirati sailor, he's had to step off for this leg, and Louis Sinclair has come on board. And this is somebody who's had some fairly strong offshore experience. He sailed on Ocean Leopard, he sailed on Comanche, a young lad under 30. So he's going to be trying to come on board here and really sort of prove his worth. But being such a young sailor, stepping on board a boat like this with years of experience, big boots to fill.
Big boots to fill, but in that sense, plenty of kind eyes and hands around you to guide you in the right direction. And I'm sure he's been put in there for his youthfulness and his enthusiasm, which you're going to need over the next 4 days as you're pushing your way through the early hours of the night.
Team Vestas Wind, the last boat to sail underneath the bridge. Fantastic to see Chris Nicholson's boat back on the water after that shipwreck on leg 2. It's hard to believe that boat was lying on a reef. We all saw the images, and that's the same boat. It's not a new boat. That is the same boat. A fantastic effort.
I think many of us are still struggling to comprehend what actually happened to them out there and the state the boat was in, and to see what they've got through and see the boat back on the raceback is a phenomenal achievement in itself.
And those sails as well, they're pretty much the same sails. I think only one of those sails was damaged and they had to repair it. The rest of them, okay, they've been in wrappers, unused, but they're still the same set that they started this race with. So it's almost a bit of a benefit for these guys. I mean, I'm not saying that they are pleased that they hit that reef, but they are starting this race with sails that haven't got anywhere near the same amount of hours. A good fight for second place here. Alvi Medica and Dongfeng Race Team Mafre just eking out in front. But the question is, Brunel coming out from that shore, will they make a gain here?
It looks like SCA followed them and just past their line as well. And everybody seems to like that side of the racetrack, which feels pretty good to me. So it'll all be about positioning as you move your way down here. Still quite a big distance to sail down to these marks, and this is a bit that we've been alluding to. This is pretty much the easier part because you've got the current with you. Vestas choosing to go a little bit further on down here. Interesting move, but once they turn around and trying to sail back upwind, that's where working the sides of the shoreline's really going to pay.
So Mafre still out in front. Team Vestas Wind electing to stay on to carry on into that deeper channel with 3 kilometers to go. It looks like we're going to be jibing down that northern shore. Knut, what do we think the breeze is going to do?
Oh, I don't know, mate. I'm very surprised about what Vestas. I mean, they seem to be sailing completely different angles than the others. I mean, right now they're sailing, I would say 30, 40, 50 degrees higher on starboard jibe. They're just making a jibe now, but I've seen that pretty consistently since the start. Either it's because they don't have the right numbers and they haven't learned as much as it's been talked about before as the others, but still they're sailing very, very tight angles all the time, slow and high, and then while the other guys are working themselves down. And I also see they're keeping their Cozero much more open than the other guys. The other guys are sheeting their sails tighter. So this could be a bit of a learning experience for Chris Nicholson and his guys to realize that there is a bit of miles to catch up on trimming knowledge and tuning knowledge on the boats. But consistently they've been sailing very, very high angles. Remember, they were very close with the SCA just 15 minutes ago, 20 minutes ago, and now they're far, far behind them just by sailing higher all the time.
So a big challenge for Chris Nicholson and his team to try and find that speed that the rest of the fleet have worked out, and you can see a bit of the difference there as the teams start to really bunch up. Crew member going up the mast on Team SCA, we saw this yesterday, trying to pop the battens, and it looks like same plan again.
Yeah, that's Liz going up there. She loves it up in the sky, so she'll get up there and you'll see it. There we go, jumps up and down, bang, there you go. So basically what happens is the aerofoil shape is the wrong way, and those battens are so stiff there's not enough wind up there at the moment to even set the top of the sail. So that's how tricky it is. And the other thing Liz will be doing is feeding information back down to deck of what she sees up there and how she thinks they should manage the breeze they have as they come into the next mark.
Well, Team SCA have done a good job in the latter stages of this section of the race. They've been able to manoeuvre themselves on top of Team Brunel, and the front pack of this fleet has really started to bunch up. Team SCA to the back of the front pack, but inside it, Team Brunel, Dongfeng Race Team, Alvi Medica, all chasing Mafre. It's Abu Dhabi Ocean Racing and Team Vestas Wind who are being left behind at this point.
Yeah, it's interesting to see that Ian sort of is as far back as he is, but I think he just got stuck in a bit of a hole. But he's working very hard to get right down on the shoreline, and I think he's probably seen there's a bit of pressure down there, and he's going to try and keep his bow down and scoot down around the edges there. I did see that in the last the heli shot we had there, that it seemed to be better pressure on the Lisbon side.
With 2.5 kilometres to go, but Abu Dhabi Ocean Racing at the bottom of your screen, close to the northern shore, they're really sailing on a very low angle. Their track being 20 degrees lower than the rest of the boat. So maybe a bit of pressure, maybe a shift going their way.
Yeah, I guess at this stage, it's going to be all about pressure. This game coming down here, you're not going to be. Unless you get a massive wind shift, 20 or 30 degrees, you're really going to be hanging with the pressure for as long as you can.
Abu Dhabi Ocean Racing, it does look a little bit light for them, so maybe that was just a little wind shift that they decided to elect down. I mean, that is very, very light wind sailing. All the crew that can be spared up towards the front of the boat, getting the bow in the water and lifting the stern clear. That's pretty tricky, and it looks to me like they're really trying to soak. That Code Zero's sheeted well off.
Yeah, no, it seems to be they've got a pretty clear plan to want to be down there, but also it looks to me like they're really just coasting through the water. They've got to be doing 3 knots here at the moment. See the breeze line sitting behind them. They'll be hoping like hell that's going to come down to them.
And it's so agonising, isn't it, when you're on the water in this light wind condition, you can see that patch of breeze that you just can't get to it.
Exactly. I sailed with quite a famous Spanish sailor that when I was a young fella, he said to me, well, when there's no wind, if you point to where there is some, by the time you get there, there'll actually be some breeze there. So it took me a while to figure it out.
Well, there you can see the tidal effect on the racecourse. Abu Dhabi Ocean Racing barely moving forward but slipping sideways all the time as the tide drags the fleet downwind towards those 2 marks at the bottom of the course. Very, very tricky, and we expect to see that tide start to rip more and more as the time ticks on.
Yeah, it's really interesting for those of us that are wondering what on the earth we're talking about, to be able to gauge that. When you get the shots of the boats against the land, you'll actually see them start shooting past the land, or and the opposite, they're not actually moving against the land.
Well, Knut, this breeze looks very, very different across the track. Every single time the camera cuts, we're seeing almost a different shade of gust on the water. How does it look from where you are?
driving the rib over a current line here, and it's a very, very, very distinct current line. So my gut feeling is we are right here where the current is changing direction, and we will start to see a flow. And it's interesting. I mean, I think Abu Dhabi paid a heavy price to go into to land there too early, or too close. I think because the current is changing here, and the question is, does it change closer to the land before it changes down here where we are by SCA? And I think SCA, for example, have made a massive gain on Abu Dhabi right now, but just staying in the middle, working on their angles, and focus very, very hard on trying to put the bow down all the time instead of jibing too much. These jibes are so expensive. If you time it badly and the wind drops completely, like I think it did for Abu Dhabi right there after the jibe, you pay an enormous price. And in the front here, we're just next to Dongfeng race team, and I would say the 3 leading boats have some pretty nice pressure here at the tip of the land here. Pretty nice pressure.
Well, we can see Mafre, the Spanish boat at the moment, still trying to eke out in front. And in fact, Knut, maybe over your shoulder, is that the tide that you're talking about? It looks like a gust from here, but maybe that's the current that we can see the boat sailing into.
Well, I mean, it looks like a big wind shadow on the corner, and for sure something is going to happen. Something is going to happen. But right now, it is clearly breeze all the way to the tip of the land. But beyond that, I will be very scared, and I can see Xabi Fernandez decided to jibe right now. He started to see those light patches where all the spectator boats are at the end of the land there, and he said, let's get out of here, let's cross and go the other way. And it's too risky to be too close to the land. So, and I think we will see Alvimerica and Dongfeng following. But it's interesting to see further back there, you know, what happened to Abu Dhabi and in the back there, because I think there is a big change here of current.
And of course the race down to the bottom of the course, if you can make it down to the bottom and start making your way back up to the top before that current gets too bad, that's going to be an advantage to you. Mafre jibing now and crossing in front of Alvimerica. Still Alvimerica keeping the Spanish boat within sight, within range. This is going to be quite a hard fought contest down to the bottom. A difficult start for what has been billed as a very windy offshore leg, and right now they have to contend with deadly light winds.
Yeah, it's always a nice false security when you're starting in super light airs and then all of a sudden you find yourselves in a big breeze. But there, bit of a Simo jibe there from Alvimerica and Dongfeng, so they both want to go that way, but I'm sure that there's been a call made on board. Let's match these guys, we're in a match. Dongfeng, crucial times here, because if they get the puff here, they could actually roll over Alvimerica, and any breeze shadow on these boats is absolutely enormous in these conditions, and you can really see how expensive these jibes are. You lose all the flow over the sails, and then you've got to re-establish the wind coming over the sails and get the boat going through the water again. It can take 3 or 4 minutes to get the boat back up to speed after a jibe like that.
This could be a very painful moment for the Americans as they make their way down to Mark II. They're going to round Mark II to starboard, round Mark III to starboard, and then head back up, fighting against the tide. Just under 2 kilometers to go before the boats reach Mark II, so plenty of downwind, light wind racing to come. And Dongfeng race team, a very aggressive jibe on top of Alvimerica, who we can see from that shot is having to sail slightly high to defend their wind. Team Brunel now coming into the mix, and do we expect to see Bauer Becking jibing on top and throwing his boxing gloves on?
I was just about to say, I'll be very interested to see what Bauer does here, whether he crosses these guys' lines or whether he actually just goes, you know, to weather in a little bit earlier on them and tries to keep himself in the clear. But I think it looks like he wants to cross their lines. And Mafre jibing as well here, so they've obviously seen a little bit of a puff that they'd like to go back to. So at the moment it's Alvimerica that's sort of got the lead on the next jibe. Looks like they're actually getting close to thinking about a jibe there as well. Yeah.
A big bear away from Alvimerica, potentially rolling themselves into a jibe and trying to clear their breeze from a very aggressive move by Dongfeng race team. Team SCA up at the windward end, light winds but staying out of trouble for the moment. They've picked a very good route through the fleet now. They've made some small gains, but at the moment they're sailing a little high compared to Team Brunel.
Yeah, well, Sally Barco, she's the tactician on board, and she did a great job to pick their way back up through the fleet yesterday. They went from a very unfortunate but tough start and managed to work their way back up into 4th place, and they managed the racecourse very well yesterday, so let's just hope for a little bit more of the same today.
Well, it looks very, very light at the moment for Sam Davies and her team, and there you can see how high her track is compared to the rest. 1,700 meters to go for Mark II, and if the breeze starts going light for Team SCA out on that side, they're going to have to jibe in down pressure, and they're going to see all the other boats just sail straight past them. Mafre still out in the lead with a good speed over the ground at the moment, up at about 6 knots. Alvi Medica now having to defend from Dongfeng race team, so light winds but very, very close at the moment. And Abu Dhabi Ocean Racing and Team Vestas both now sailing down and coming inside of Team SEA. This could be a key moment here.
It could be a key moment. Caroline Brower, she's the helmsman there and working closely with Sam. They'll be chatting away the whole time. Caroline's really using her fingertips to coast the boat down through these light conditions, and I'm sure they're looking down to leeward and talking about what they've got and how they're going to play this out.
Well, as we make our way down towards the bottom of the course, this is the city that's been hosting these teams for the last 10 days, and what a fantastic stopover it's been, and what a fantastic history this city has got, and it's so great to be sailing in such picturesque waters.
Yes, and in such a place so steeped in history and certainly nautical history. And I must say the people and the general atmosphere in this town is absolutely lovely. It's a very nice place to come to, and I certainly know that the Team SCA have thoroughly enjoyed the hospitality.
And you can see that by the spectator fleet that we've had out on the water yesterday and today. I mean, every spare inch of water that we've allowed these spectators to fill, they filled it. I mean, there were almost worries about too many boats on the water yesterday, so the city certainly showing its support for the Volvo Ocean Race. Light winds at the moment, and it could almost mean that these spectators here get an extra long chance to wave goodbye to the fleet. Mafre now sailing towards the middle of the river. Alvi Medica and Dongfeng at the top, punching towards the northern side, but look at those tracks. Abu Dhabi Ocean Racing towards the back, very much on a downwind course. Team SCA now finally getting that pressure and starting to bear away.
Yeah, there must have been a little bit of what's called a header or a left-hand shift as they've come around this point here that we were discussing earlier, which is allow you see it in their course bending down towards the marks, and of course, you know, that becomes very expensive for these other boats, Dongfeng, and that are on the wrong jibe going into the land.
Well, which sort of these tactics do you think will work? Because as you can see from that helicopter shot, on the right-hand side, we've got Dongfeng Race Team and Team Alvi Medica tucked in very close to that port, and they're obviously going there for something. What is it that you think that they're trying to gain from?
Well, I don't know. It could also be that Charlie's seen an opportunity to control Dongfeng, and he just wanted to push him over there, you know, get him out of play. But it will be interesting. I just couldn't call it at the moment.
Well, from that helicopter shot, you can see the breeze that we have on the river at the moment. Very light, very patchy conditions, but if you can maneuver your boat into one of those little funnels of gusts, you can make the boat go forward. Team Vestas Wind, they've brought themselves back into this race. They're not too far behind, only about 100 meters behind Team SCA at the moment, and they were a long way back. So maybe those gusts as they rolling down, benefiting the boats towards the back of the fleet first.
Yeah, we'll see a lot of rubber band effect going on out here over the next hour or so as the boats sort of get out of little puffs and they extend away and then push into one another. It's pretty tough conditions, and it's just whoever's got the pressure looks the best at the time.
Dongfeng Race Team and Alvi Medica making their way back into the course from that northern shore, still very much locked together, and it'll be interesting to see here from their tracks on that shot, and in fact from that helicopter shot as well, you can see the boats on the right hand side, Alvi Medica and Dongfeng Race Team, sailing much higher than the rest of the fleet. Now that could be pressure, it could be because they're in this little jewel just by themselves, but either way that's not what they want to do.
No, you don't want to. They want to be getting down, but they definitely have a little bit of puff there. You can see them in the background of that shot there. Caroline just totally dialed in with the boat at the moment. You see them just sneaking down the seawall there. It looks like they might be just in a little bit of something down there.
Alvi Medica just drifting past the northern shore, and hopefully for them making a few little gains on that side of the course. Mafre still in the lead, but with the impossible task now of covering a fleet that's really split.
Yeah, you've got both sides. I mean, really at the moment you just have to ignore the other boats and try and figure out where your next puff's going to come from and get there as quickly as you can.
The track's now looking like they've equalised a little bit. Dongfeng Race Team and Alvi Medica matching the course of Team SCA and Mafre towards the middle of the course. Abu Dhabi Ocean Racing, the boat that you can see right in the middle of your screen by themselves, they're on a very downwind course, so that could be Ian Walker electing to really push his boat down deep into the breeze, or it could be a little bit of a gust starting to develop. In the bottom of your screen, in front of all these boats, you can see the marks. We are zeroing in on that first mark. Starboard rounding before reaching off to another mark and then coming round. Now, Richard, those boats on the right, they look like they're starting to develop. Bit of breeze coming their way.
Well, interesting. Just look at the boat speeds here. You've got SCA doing 4 knots, and you've got Dongfeng Race Team doing 6. So they've obviously found some nice puff down there, and they've also got a pretty good angle, so they don't have to come down. They can come up, and coming up makes it you go a little bit quicker.
Well, according to our computer, we could be seeing a lead change here. Dongfeng Race Team and Alvi Medica on the right-hand side, as you say. Good speed, and look at the gain line between them and Mafre in the middle of your picture. It's only a boat length to go before Alvi Medica claims the lead in this race, and that will be a lead purely won on tactics.
Yeah, it's all starting to close up here, and I guess it'll close up even more, and you'll see once they swing around the bottom mark and go into the tide, those boats, it'll be a big compression as they all sort of come into one another. It was obviously a nice move to get down on the Lisbon side there and to pressure. I'm just looking at this flag in this courtyard here. It's not a lot of breeze in that at all.
A fantastic look at the city of Lisbon as the boats start making their way down towards the bottom of the course. Some breeze starting to fill the sails. Mafre still in the lead for the moment. However, their margin starting to thin as Alvi Medica and Dongfeng Race Team make a charge along the northern shore. And look how much tide you can start to see developing just going behind the bow of Mafre there. A yellow mark anchored to the bottom of the river. That was really being pulled over, so the tide's starting to flow.
Yeah, she's starting to get moving now. We're a couple of hours into the tidal shift, so you get max flow sort of about 3 hours into it. So we're approaching that point, and it'll become more and more of a factor. It looks like Mafre are getting a nice little puff there, and it's really interesting to see these weather boats all bending down. So I think what Mafre are trying to do here is to get down to Alpha Medica's lines while they've got pressure, and then they'll sort of sit between them and the next mark. So they're just trying to get into a position where they can control them.
So Mafre's track pushing them down closer to the marks as they're able to bear the boat away with a little bit of newfound pressure. Behind them, the rest of the fleet also matching their course, but Alvi Medica and Dongfeng Race Team reaching along the shore. We've yet to see how this is going to play out. We're into the final moments before we reach this downwind mark. A starboard rounding around the bottom of the course, and Mafre almost losing this lead, and Alvi Medica still in the hunt.
Yeah, it's going to be, I think we're going to see a couple of changes before the boats really get out of here. Once they start beating back upwind, it'll become even trickier as they have to sail in and out of the tide, and I think we'll see them rotating around. But it's super light down there. I see Rob Greenhouse sitting down and all the boys up on the bow. They're looking for every little ounce they can get out of these things.
Well, as we narrow in on those bottom marks, Canute, we're seeing this breeze really up and down. The tracks are changing a lot. These conditions very puffy.
Yeah, they are, but there's no doubt that the move that Alvi Medica and Dongfeng made was a good one, and I can see they have more pressure than the others. And remember that the wind has been shifting left here. It's clearly a more left wind, which means that for everyone else, for Brunel, SCA and Vestas, if they have to jibe now to get to the mark, it's going to be extremely painful. That's going to be very, very expensive. So I think a good move by Alvi Medica and Brunel. They're going to be able to set a faster angle than, Alvi Medica and Dongfeng. So they'll be a good gain for them.
Do you think Mafre are still going to be able to hold on to the lead as we come into Mark 2?
Well, I think they will. But no doubt the others are going to be sort of nice distance behind them. The interesting thing I can see on our screens, our info screens, is that the race committee is now starting to have the nice westerly, northwesterly breeze filling in. So there's more wind now at the start area, so on the way out again they will slowly sail into more breeze.
Yeah, that's going to make a key player as who gets out underneath this bridge first. I'm looking out the window here, and I've been watching it filling in over the last 10 minutes, and that could well be the fact, that the lead boat gets into it, the rich get richer. This could be very key to the outcome of the leg, this.
Well, Canute, a fierce battle on the way downwind, and which side of this course do you think is going to pay on the way back up?
Wow, that's an interesting one. I mean, right now, Alvi Medica and Dongfeng is almost parking. I mean, they completely lost the wind in their sails. I don't know what's happening. Brunel still has pressure, but even Mapfre now completely parked up. I mean, nothing, no wind. It just went out like the air out of a balloon, completely stopped. And what a backdrop. We are downtown Lisbon. We have the most famous, iconic landmark in Lisbon in front of us. Lots of people are lined up to watch the racing. It's crowds everywhere, and beautiful, beautiful landmark. But this is going to be tricky, because if the current has started pushing them down here, Mapfre is going to have to be quick to jibe, because they could end up on the wrong end of the mark, wrong side of the mark. So they're going to have to work themselves on the other jibe now to be on the right side of this rounding mark. Hardly any wind, as I said, really died completely. And maybe this is the change that we have predicted, a big change of wind direction. The race committee told us before the start that they had a 180-degree wind direction in the gate. Now Mapfre has jibed and they're filling in the breeze from the other side. But this is going to be good news normally it should be good news for Mapfre, because they are the first one to get this new breeze, and they will accelerate and actually increase their lead. But at the rounding mark, which I'm looking at right now, the current has started flowing towards us, so they're going to be sailing in head current against them, going up again to the starting area.
What a challenging downwind slog to the bottom of the course, as the breeze refusing to give the sailors much of a let-up. The tide helping the boats down to the bottom, and it's the Spanish boat Mapfre just making it round the bottom of the course as the new breeze starts to make effect.
It's going to be, if this direction stays, it's going to be quite difficult for SCA and Vestas as they come across with their outgoing tide. What we saw there was Mapfre didn't actually change direction, the wind just changed direction on them, so it was almost an 80-degree wind shift, which took the wind from one side of the yacht to the other. Now what they're going to be doing is reaching from Mark II to Mark III. The big danger is for Vestas and these guys up here. If it gets too light for them, they could actually get swept past this mark. But I think at the moment they'll be just fine.
And this has turned out beautiful for the Spanish boat here, because they've just made it to that bottom mark before this new breeze has come in, and now everyone is struggling to get down to the bottom. Brunel also having to make some changes in that massive wind shift that's really going to open up the gap between Mapfre and the rest of the fleet.
And it actually gets, it's going to sound strange, but it'll actually get easier for Mapfre once they get around this third mark to sail, because the tidal effect of them pushing downwind and taking the wind away is going to go, and they'll be going upwind, which gives them more apparent wind to work with, which in super light conditions actually gives you more feel. It gives you something to get you through the water, even though you're getting swept by the tide.
Well, you can see from that shot just how strong the current is starting to flow. The Spanish boat Mapfre with that code 0 strapped in quite tight, and you can see how much they are fighting the urge to drift sideways. Behind them, we're waiting to see who out of Alvi Medica, Dongfeng Race Team or Team Brunel is going to make it into second place. A huge relief for the Spanish boat to be round that bottom mark. Alvi Medica now just enough breeze to fly that code 0. Dongfeng on top of them, electing to sail a little bit higher, and maybe Alvi Medica now going for the jibe.
Yes, yeah, I mean those sails are really, they're just hanging there. There's nothing there. It's super tough to be in there, and it'd be interesting to see with Brunel being just closer to the mark and everyone getting swept down by the tide, that they might actually sneak through on the inside on this one.
Well, this has worked out very well for Bauer Becking and Team Brunel. He's played this last few hundred meters perfectly. That breeze just coming in to favour him, and now he's inches away from being the inside boat between him and Alvi Medica. If Alvi Medica can just get that boat moving and get it through that incredibly painful light wind jibe, they might be able to cross the bows of Team Brunel and keep second place.
That's going to be a huge jibe, by the way. There's no wind. They almost don't have any steerage. Here they go now. just getting the boat round through it, but building speed out of this jibe is just going to be super, super tough.
They're going to have to come right up onto the breeze here to try and get any sort of apparent wind flowing over those sails, and that is going to take them away from the mark.
Yeah, and Bauer will be interested to see if he can actually get to them here. It looks like it's hard to tell from that shot, but there could be quite a close cross here. But Bauer, he's suffering from the same. He's really, the breeze has just stopped from there. Look at it, his sails are just hanging. Here he goes. He's going to jibe as well. So he's hoping that he's going to be able to lead them back in. And what could you see Alpha Medica here with the tide? You could really see the tidal effect. They're not going through the water, but they're going sideways on your screen here. So you have to be a bit careful of this large rocks that are down the other side here. You want to be well clear of those. I'm sure they will be, but
well, Alvy Medica needs to be especially careful of Team Brunel, because in a moment Team Brunel will be firmly on their breeze, blocking the wind from getting to their sails. So Alvy Medica need to take the opportunity now to build any speed that they can. If they're not moving, that boat simply will not turn around the mark. There you can see, look how quickly that boat is moving sideways on the tide. It's not going forward very fast, but it really is shooting past the course at the moment. That's pretty challenging for the sailors. Canute, this current now really starting to rip.
Yeah, the current is definitely starting to flow, so this is going to be a long light beat going upwind. And I'm almost having nightmares here, because I'm seeing a déjà vu from yesterday with Vestas and Team SEA coming together to a new bottom mark in a very strong current in very light wind. And we all remember what happened yesterday. I think Nikolai, the Danish sailor on Vestas, is probably going to stay away from jumping on the buoy today. But it's really strong current now, really strong, very light wind, and a very difficult situation for Abu Dhabi, because they find themselves now dead downwind. I mean, with the mark dead downwind, so they're going to have to jibe themselves down to this rounding mark and be quite far behind on the first gate. And this is the kind of opening that I'm sure Ian Walker has had nightmares about. He just need to stay close to Dongfeng and the other guys. But if he leaves Lisbon in 7th place, anything can happen on the scoreboard. So I'm sure he's not the happiest person right now, because this is a situation where there's not too much you can do. You played your card.
Sorry, Canute, I'm just going to have to interrupt you there, because the tight mark rounding between Team Brunel and Alvy Medica almost resulted in a collision. Alvy Medica giving mark room to Team Brunel, allowing them to come inside at that mark, but Team Brunel just slipping sideways, and as windward boat they have to keep clear, and they almost collided with the Americans.
Within a metre, I think it came down to 1.5 foot there, and in crucial times now we're going to have Dongfeng coming in the mix as well. They're coming in with a bit of pace.
And this is just working out disastrously for Alvy Medica. You'd rather be behind the other boat than to leeward. No breeze in your sails, no manoeuvrability at all, and you're just going to watch the fleet roll over the top of you as you carry on slipping sideways. Now, can Charles Cordrelia get that boat moving forward rather than slipping down on top of the other two boats? We can see Alvy Medica parked up, Team Brunel parked up, and now Dongfeng Race Team. Canute, this is looking pretty close.
It is very, very close, but what is interesting here is that even though it looks on their pointing, the way they are pointing, that they're going to make it to the next mark, they are not making it to the next mark. Mapfre is now far, far down from the line of the next mark, because the current is so much stronger here and the wind is so light, so the current really plays the biggest role here. So they're being set far, far down from the next mark, and afterwards they're going to have to work themselves around that mark, try to find a place with less current. And unfortunately the mark is pretty much in the middle of the bay here, so there's not much shadow from current here. They're going to have to work very hard here to get up to the mark. If there's just a little bit more breeze coming down, and I saw the race committee talked about the breeze filling in from the north, if that happens, it could be tricky for Mapfre too, because they're finding themselves now far to leeward of the line between the marks.
Well, we can just see Alvy Medica being able to keep their bow out in front. Mapfre in the front of the fleet. Light winds for them, and they're moving, but they're not making any great progress to Mark 3.
No, they're not. It's even more difficult because the boat's actually side on to the current at the moment, so you've got the maximum surface area possible being exposed to the current, pushing you sideways. So once they tack over, which I think they're about to do now, they'll have much less wetted surface area going into the current, so minimise the effect, but it's going to be tough. Now the next move after this is sending a bit of lead to the bottom of the ocean. You have to actually anchor at some point if the current's overtaking too hard here.
This breeze not making the job easy for the sailors at all, refusing to stay from one direction. Team SCA ahead of Team Vestas Wind. Abu Dhabi Ocean Racing at the back at the moment. It's not been a great downwind leg for them, but all three boats barely moving over this tide, and the jibe and the turn at that bottom buoy is going to be crucial. Abu Dhabi Ocean Racing, you can see just how high they're having to sail. Not a lot of breeze to windward of them for the rest of the fleet coming back upwind. This is going to be a very challenging push against the tide.
Oh, for sure. And actually, even though we're sitting out the window here looking at some breeze, and there's some talk about it in the committee boat, there is an awful long way to go for these boats as they've got to sail back up there.
Team SCA now jibing for that bottom mark, and it looks like they've just found a little bit of breeze. Their code 0 filling, but the key moment will be when they turn around that bottom mark. Are they going forwards or sideways?
If one gust of wind could change the whole game here, because say if Team SCA, they get a little bit of breeze here and they're able to hang up into the tide and advance across to Mark 3, and the other boats are all getting west further and further downwind, that could turn into a massive advantage. So super key times here. If you can keep the boat moving, keep it rolling, and minimise the amount of time you're spending with that hull exposed to all that tide, you can do very well. But at the moment, it's tough for all of them.
Well, I'm sure Sam Davies and Carolyn Brower will be pleased to be safely around that bottom mark ahead of Team Vestas Wind. Those two boats locked into a battle at the import rest yesterday that actually resulted in one of the boats hitting the mark and actually a small graze between the two teams. Chris Nicholson now taking his boat round the bottom of the course, and these boats now, they look like they have got a little bit more pressure in their sails. It looks like they're just being able to generate a little bit more power than the leaders.
Yeah, I'm just spotting a little bit here, the attack of the code 0, that it's not fully unfurled. It just came out now. So that's just showing you how little breeze there is at the moment. And normally there's tons of load on the corners of these sails, and there's not even enough wind to fill them. And you can see just in that shot there how quickly they're going sideways. There must be 3.5 knots of current there I'm picking at the moment.
Well, you were almost joking about having to pull out the anchor before, but at what point do you have to work out the anchor's going to have to go down? I mean, this is going to be quite an important decision. It's quite a courageous decision almost to put the anchor down, but it's hard to try and make that transition, isn't it?
Oh, it is. I mean, it's a navigator's call at some point. I mean, just look at Mafre. They're 139 metres from the mark at the moment, and normally that would just be a straight reach across.
And that distance between Mafre and the mark, that's actually been increasing. We've seen that down to about 80 metres. Now it's up to 135 metres. So this boat being pulled away from the mark, they're not gaining towards that mark. They're not going in the right direction.
No, and then you've got the other boats coming in between you. So that's what I was saying about that gust of wind. You know, if these other boats can survive and get across here, and they're getting washed down, which is happening. The breeze is filling here. This could be a big lead change.
Or Team SCA finding a little bit of pace. Abu Dhabi Ocean Racing coming into that first downwind mark with a little bit of breeze, and this would really go Ian Walker's way if the breeze fills in from that shore and he's able to just simply roll over the rest of the boats as they're dragged down tide.
Yeah, just see Justin Slattery standing on the bow there sort of talking to Ian, round you come, you know. You get as close as he can. A metre could turn into 10 metres here with the way that current, so you just want to be as close as you can to it. And look at them just coming around on the wind. They may actually come out of this okay.
They're finding just enough boat speed to hold their position over the ground. They're not slipping sideways as much as the rest of the fleet. Somehow Ian Walker is making it work for him.
If you were to look at this picture and there was a normal breeze on it, you would say that Abu Dhabi's in the lead, because all these other boats are getting washed downwind and it's just so expensive. So you'll see them trying to hold up as much as they can. This is really tough.
Ian Walker really pushing the bow up there. As you can see on the virtual eye image, his boat, it's the only one at the moment that's sailing a track that's taking him to the mark. I mean, look at Mafre now. Their white track line, that signifies the direction the boat's been travelling in relative to the ground, and all the time they've been losing on this mark. Behind them, the rest of the fleet, they're not faring as badly.
Well, it's pretty tough here, because that shot there is distance to the mark vertical. That's 60, but they're actually they're more like 300-400 metres from the mark at the moment if you just do the quick numbers on that one. So it's just really tough stuff.
Now look at Team SCA here, to windward of Dongfeng, to windward of Team Vestas Wind. Them and Abu Dhabi Ocean Racing are the only two boats that seem to be making progress to the next mark. So the breeze could be filling in from that right-hand side, and this could go the way of Sam Davies and Team SCA.
Well, that breeze direction is what we're feeling up here. We're a lot further up the racetrack where we're sitting here. We're way up in the distance in this shot that you're looking at now. Just look at these guys. Now they've actually even gone to a jib, which is a sign of it being super light. So when it gets too light, you fill up the code 0 and you basically got to use your J1 as a drifting sail. And that's where they're at now. So just look at that picture of these boats piled up behind us. There you go. That's what you call a park up.
Frustration for the sailors on board the Spanish boat Mafre. They rounded that first downwind mark looking like they were going to stretch their lead out over the fleet, and now the breeze and the tide working against them as they are in danger of letting the rest of the fleet sail over the top.
Now this is the beauty of the Volvo Ocean Race, because in any other yacht race in the world they just call it off. But on this yacht race, you've got to deal with it. You've got to deal with the tide. You've got to deal with no wind. You've got to deal with 100 knots of wind. So that's what turns these people into such fantastic sailors.
And all of this being played out in front of the square in Lisbon, such an iconic point here, dating all the way back to the 1700s. It's a perfect point to have this drama right in front of the town there.
And what a drama is unfolding here. I'm sure there'd be, I noticed Shabby's actually balding a bit, so he might be ripping even more of his hair out down there at the moment.
Well, the sails hanging in the breeze with Abu Dhabi Ocean Racing, just enough power being generated to help them stay over the tide. Abu Dhabi Ocean Racing, Team SEA, still the only two boats that are making some benefit.
Oh, you could just see the woolies and the main of Abu Dhabi there. They're usually light pieces of wool that flow when there's wind in the sails, and they're all hanging dead down. So there's just no air moving across those sails at all at the moment.
Now
Super
there's
tough.
the image from the tracks. You can see the white track of Mafre, still that boat sailing away from the next mark. So you'd have to say at this point, there's not a lot of options for this fleet. You're thinking about the anchor. Canute, what can these boats do?
Well, that's a good question. I think we should be very careful about drawing too quick conclusions, because I don't think Mafre has lost. I don't think Mafre has lost this race yet. They clearly haven't, and I think the others are getting washed down as well. They're sailing into less and less breeze, and there is a different breeze in this bay that we're getting into when we get close to the other marks. And Mafre just basically tack there, and if they can sail the direction they're sailing right now, they will make it on the mark there in front of the fleet. But it's very little pressure. That said, I just spoke to Jack Lloyd, the race director. He's up at closer to the committee boat and the start area, and he said there is a sea breeze that started to fill in. So at some stage, the leading boats here are going to work themselves up, short tacking, avoiding the current on the sides, either on the Lisbon side or the opposite side. And then slowly they will get the sea breeze stronger and stronger, and they will for sure stretch for the boats behind. But I think Mafre is looking strong there. The breeze has shifted here. We're starting to see a much more northerly wind direction, west-northwest, and Mafre has found that new breeze, and they're looking pretty good there, I think, on port tack. Everyone's going to have to tack here, and you can see Alve America's tacking now, Brunel is tacking, so yes, it did look good for Abu Dhabi there right after the rounding, because they were pointing at the mark, but right now I wouldn't want to swap them. If I was Mafre, I would have kept my position there.
So Mafre starting to find that new breeze filling in from the left-hand side, looking upwind, now finally making progress towards that next mark, and they're now sailing straight into the tide. So all the speed they generate, battling that tide efficiently.
Yeah, well, I mean, you don't have a lot of options. You've just got to get over it, keep sailing what you've got until you get on the ley lines for the breeze that you have, and they've found a nice shift there. And with that left-hand shift, all these leeward boats, as you look down here, that puts them, they've got a long way to sail. So as this new breeze direction fills in, they'll look stronger and stronger as Mafre sort of approach this next rounding mark, and will start exiting out underneath the bridge and away from Lisbon into the building pressure.
Well, Canute, with this new pressure coming onto the boats, are they going to be able to lay the bridge without tacking?
Oh, absolutely. But I expect the breeze to be further right, further up. So right now they would, and I think that those who made the absolute best of this last leg between the two boys is probably Alve America. They are laying the next mark here from their position, so Mafre went too far. But I think further up the racetrack we are expecting a wind to be further right, so we're not expecting them to lay all the way. But let's see how far they get on this direction. I'm sure they're going to maximize the use of the pressure they have now. It's quite a lot of wind there. I'm just at the second gate mark, and for the first time I can feel the breeze. I can sense it in the hair and the fingers. there is definitely wind here.
So relief for the Spanish team, Mafre, as the breeze fills in, they tack over and keep hold of the lead, heading to Mark 3. Alvi Medica behind them, still making a few gains, but the boat that seems to be able to capitalize on this at the moment, Team SCA on the inside. If they can lay from their position, they will be chasing down Mafre, Team Brunel and Alvi Medica. There is the next mark that's caused all this trouble, so difficult to reach, and finally Mafre round that mark, winning the battle against the tide.
Yeah, done well. It's really Alvi Medica have played this beautifully. You know, they've as that breeze shifted in, they were to sort of cut the corner a little bit and get right up on Mafre's line. So probably what we'll see happen here is Mafre sort of try and push down onto their line and put them in a bit of dirty air. Be very important for SCA to be able to get up to Alvi Medica's line and find a nice clean lane of pressure to make sure they lay this next mark.
A great ley line call from the boys on board Alvi Medica as they make a few meters gain with Mafre. Mafre now plenty of pressure, sailing off at around 8 knots over the water, so good speed finally for this boat. Behind them, Alvi Medica in second, Team Brunel in third, and there you can see Team SCA. The big question, will they lay this next mark?
Well, hopefully if they can hold that angle they will, because they've actually got this thing called lee bow effect. So as the tide comes in, if the boat's angled to it, the funny would actually push the boat up towards the wind. So if they're lucky, they'll get around on that one. Pretty fine ley line to pick from a long way out, but worth having a go. You see the guys on Brunel, they're all still got the weight forward here. But we should see these boats really start to, the lead boats extend as they come out of here.
Well, all this drama being played out right off the shore of Lisbon. Team Brunel now round that mark, and it looks like just behind them, Team SCA will round this mark and hold on to 4th place. So relief for Bauer Becking as he holds on to 3rd, and fantastic result for Sam Davies, Carolyn Brower and the rest of the team as Team SCA looks set to take 4th.
It looks like they're getting pushed up from the mark, so they'll be okay. They'll be keeping a very close eye on their course over ground at the moment on the navigation box in the back. Libby will be talking about inches, I think, at the moment.
But you can see the speed difference between Team SCA and Team Brunel. Team Brunel able to put the bow down slightly and run a little faster. Team SCA, they're moving towards that mark. They are making a gain, but it really is slow.
Yeah, no, they're just having to hold up here to get around, and as they get clearer and clearer on the mark, they'll be able to put the bow down, ease the sails a little bit, get some flow going on those sails and start getting it going forward a little bit quicker. This should be over the next 30 seconds we'll see a bit of relief come onto the faces of the girls. There goes the bow now, just coming down a little bit.
A very tight ley line call, but they've made it work for them if they can just squeeze their way past that mark. They don't look too nervous about hitting it. We have seen boats do that before, but Team SCA now round Mark 3 and take 4th place at the moment in this leg.
Yeah, it was nicely played there, and obviously Mafre managed to get into that new breeze first, and off they go. So they're doing a cracking 8 knots at the moment, so and it's going to get quicker and quicker as they come up. This Mafre nicely settled in.
Well, now we can see the breeze starting to build on the course. This is the sea breeze that we were talking about coming in, and the Spanish boat have turned that breeze into nearly 9 knots of boat speed. Alvi Medica now with the breeze in their sails. Abu Dhabi Ocean Racing still slow speeds at the back of the fleet. But there comes the Frenchman, Charles Caudrelier, around Mark 3. Dongfeng race team about to find the best of that sea breeze, and we should start to see the boat speeds coming up. Big relief for the sailors.
Yeah, big relief, and especially as they can see a bit of an exit strategy with getting out onto the other side of the bridge. I think once the boats get up and on the weather side of the bridge, on the windward side, the breezes will get more consistent, and should be easy for them to work their way out.
Is that a little bit of a smile I can see on the face of skipper Charles Caudrelier? I mean, he's got Abu Dhabi Ocean Racing behind him. That is where he wants them to be. This is not a bad start for Dongfeng race team.
Yeah, it's done pretty well. You've got to be careful with the Frenchmen with their smile, because they can smile at you and still be thinking something else. So I've certainly seen that on the rugby field a few times. But no, I'm sure that they're very happy to have them tucked away there, and a nice position to control them from.
Double Olympic medalist Ian Walker takes Abu Dhabi Ocean Racing round Mark 3. This breeze really starting to establish itself across the racecourse. Abu Dhabi Ocean Racing having to chase the fleet from 6th position behind them. Team Vestas Wind. Now this is not the start that Ian Walker wanted to this leg. It's a much shorter leg, nearly 700 nautical miles from Lisbon to Lorient, and compared to what we've seen before, it's a bit of a sprint. So a small loss at the beginning and you might not get the chance to pull it back.
Well, there's not, initially as they start beating up the coast here, I don't think there's going to be a lot of passing lanes. As you look at this shot up here, they're going to go exiting around these corners. Way in the background there, they're going to be turning right as they come out and coming hard on the wind. And it's all going to be about controlling those bows that are outside of you and having the right to position yourself where you want to be. So no one in this fleet is going to let you past very easily.
A crewman up the rig of Team Vestas Wind as they now come around that third mark. Now, Chris Nicholson was sailing this boat very well in the import race that we saw yesterday, so they're certainly not slow. Maybe a few bad decisions going on. They didn't have a great start, just lost a little bit of a chance to attack, but we are expecting to see some good speeds from this team.
Yes. What the other teams will have is they've got a very clear feeling of what sail they should be on when. And for these guys, it'll just be a case of feeling it out and getting a feeling for what's right. But so long as they're around other boats, they'll be able to identify that very early on and make a mental note of it, when to be using what when. And they're looking pretty comfortable there. And one thing is these sails are in much better shape than the rest of the fleet, which that does give you a big advantage, especially when you're going upwind. It can give you a slight height advantage. So they should be in good shape.
Well, Canute, we're seeing some good speeds across the fleet. Maffrey just a little down from what we saw earlier. Is this sea breeze starting to really establish and fill in?
Well, whether you call it the sea breeze is a question, but I think it's certainly a different wind, and it's certainly something we didn't have on the way down. So I think this is the breeze that the race committee has been talking about on the start area. And it looks darker further up north now. When I look towards the starting area where they're sailing back to, under the bridge and beyond it, it looks darker on the water. So I'm expecting that this should help them to get all the way out there. Maybe a bit more headed, a bit more northerly when they get further up, but certainly we have solid breeze here.
So we should be seeing these boats being able to hold this pressure and hold the fight against the tide, hopefully avoiding another park up here. Team Vestas Wind, the bow team at the front, just making their adjustments with the sail, and a couple of new people on board this boat. We've got Simeon 10-Point from the Netherlands, 33 years of age. He's joined on board this boat, a real powerhouse in sailing, having done the ABN AMRO 2. He's crouched down at the front of the boat there, and of course towards the back of the boat we've also added Tom Addis from Australia, 47 years of age. He takes on the role of navigator, and this is somebody with some previous Volvo Ocean Race experience and a solid pair of hands for this team.
Yeah, so Tom was navigating Puma in the last race, and prior to that he Telefonica Blue. You just see him there with the binoculars having a look up the harbour there. As much as a navigator who'll keep you out of dangerous waters, he's got a pretty good eye for what's going on around the racetrack as well. So very, very valuable guy to have in your team.
Well, at the front of the pack, Maffrey having to sail down to the right hand side, so maybe a little bit of a wind shift. Maybe we did speak too soon about this breeze filling in. In fact, we can see there on board Team Vestas Wind the anchor coming out, so maybe they had it ready and now they've decided don't need it, but it's going away for the moment.
Yeah, no, I think they might have got that out on deck as they were going around those bottom marks, and we're getting a bit concerned they're going sideways too much, and it looks like they're just going to pack it away and get it downstairs. Big action up in the lead of the fleet. Big header here, big wind shift. So the boats are getting headed down. It's going to become more of a true beat as they get out. It's going to be very tricky to get around this bridge.
A 90-degree turn to the right for Maffrey and Alvi Medica. A huge wind shift. Team Brunel still holding on to their original course. And we'll have to wait and see as to how that develops for the whole of the fleet. Chris Nicholson at the back of this fleet at the moment in 7th place. He's got the advantage. He can look up the course and he can try and work out what's going to happen, judging by the angles of the boats in front. There you can see that breeze going light and patchy again. Team Brunel in the middle of your picture, having to turn to the right and look at the difference in angles. Two different breezes that we're seeing on the racecourse at the moment. Team SCA holding themselves up. Team Vestas Wind also holding that higher course. Very challenging time for the navigators here.
Oh, well, a challenging time for the tacticians, everybody. It looks like the whole fleet's turning a corner, but what you're actually seeing here is the breeze is shifting to the right, and as it's coming down, it's pushing all the boats to do a right-hand turn and come down. Now, if you can hang up in the old breeze, you can get a bit of advantage. So it's this is far from over. We're gonna see some more changes coming up here.
Well, Canute, what can you tell us here? Help us to try and unlock this breeze. What's going on?
Well, I think this is not completely unexpected. I think the race committee flagged that they had a northerly, northwesterly breeze, and what we have down here now is a west-southwesterly, and I think that it is predicted to shift to the right. The challenge is it drops at the same time, and then with the current, your angle becomes 90, 100 degrees different. I mean, I can see I'm with Vestas Wind here, and they're pointing 120 degrees different than Albumerica on the same tack. And the question is, do you try to stay in the old breeze as long as possible and hope you're going to get a better lane than the others? Or do you actually reach now into land quickly and set yourself up as a forward-leeward boat? Sort of the sailing school will probably tell you the latter, to sort of use the wind when you have it to get as close to the shore you want to as soon as you can. Because what Vestas is doing now, they're actually pointing at the opposite shore, and they're going to be furthest away from land when they start pointing in. So this is a kind of it's a bit of a game you're playing. I mean, how much risk do you want to take? Where is the new wind? Where's the old wind? But I think I would be very scared when if I were Chris Nicholson there, I'm just boat length behind him. He's sitting looking out behind his Code Zero sail and scratching his head here. What am I going to do? Because you're sailing into a wall of no wind, and you have only from now to that wall to place yourself somewhere. Because after that wall it drops and you can't go anywhere. So I think right now I think he's just hoping that he's going to be lucky.
Well, Canute, as you were saying that, we could just see Abu Dhabi Ocean Racing taking the first bear away in their group of Dongfeng and Team SEA. Does Chris Nicholson have any options here on the left-hand side?
No, he doesn't really. I mean, he can't tack there. He's gonna. The wind is gonna drop for him, and him and his team, they're gonna have to bear away as well. He's just gonna hope that they can get further. But I'm a little worried on his behalf, because I'm looking at Mapfre now having tacked to starboard, and almost having a breeze that's even straight north. So that's not going to be an advantage for Chris Nicholson. But in some of these conditions you can hope to be lucky, but you have to look what's ahead of you, and clearly there is a completely different wind direction ahead. And in sailing, when the wind dies, then when you have a right to be frustrated, because there's nothing you can do. But until it dies, when you see it's dying in front of you, you have to think very quickly. What do I want to do with the breeze I have right now? So Chris is thinking, he has speed right now, he's doing 5-6 knots, I can read his speedo from here. The other guys are doing significantly less. Where do I want to be in 100 meters?
Does Chris Nicholson have enough pressure though for him to bear away and try and reach over, because it's so light on the racecourse at the moment?
I tell you, as we speak, he's losing the wind as well. So he's now hitting that same wall as the others. And he's just slowly dying, and he's not going to be able to bear away, because the wind is going to change for him. And I think it's easy for us to think about this as a wind direction change, but I think it's more of a wind strength change. Like the wind dies completely, the current is setting them down as well, which means that the current is actually making the wind even less strong. If you have 1 knot of current sending you backwards, that means you have 1 knot less wind as well on the sail. So all of this at the same time means not very good. And I'm looking at Mapfre and Brunel, and they have a breeze, very northerly breeze there now on starboard, and actually starting to fill what I think is the new sea breeze. So for Vestas this is not good news, because they're going to have to work themselves to the other shore and wait for that new breeze to fill in.
Well, Mapfre still in the lead, working very hard to hold on to their lead that they've taken from the start line. Team Brunel just behind them, chasing quite hard, and this is a pretty tight competition as the camera operator just takes a spin around Christ the King, this huge statue that we have on the hill here, looking down onto the sailors. And this will be a very, very challenging next few minutes as this breeze dies, and we see a very important transition for the crews to make. At the moment, no one making real solid progress up to the top of the course.
No, and that's what I was saying. It's going to take these guys a long time to exit out of here. I'm just looking out the window. We've got a harbour entrance here where there's actually a wake going forward from the tide that's coming past it. So it's they might be coming past here at 6 o'clock tonight.
Well, this is a nice chance for the sailors at least to just take in the sights of the city one last time. I mean, this statue, this is going back to 1969. It's 79 metres tall. It's quite a colossal feature on the hill there, and the sailors from where they are, it cuts quite an opposing figure. And as you can see, the camera starting to pan round there. That water just looks featureless, doesn't it? There's no breeze out there at all.
definitely no sheep in the paddock out here at the moment. It's a good Kiwi term for white horses. A little bit of a patch there coming down. Could be another change coming to that darker patch. Look, Vesta's just picking up that puff. Massive gain for Vestas.
This could be a really key moment for Chris Nicholson. Look at this on the virtual eye. We've got boats to the left-hand side, the leaders, now struggling to go upwind. Team Vestas, their track taking up. They're looking a little bit good back there. Look at Team SCA on the right-hand side. Their track now taking them right up. Mafre, Team Brunel and Alvi Medica struggling at the front. Canute, another big change. Team Vestas, bit of breeze in the sails.
Yeah, big surprise here. I mean, the breeze basically filled in from the west or from the left here, big time. And look at Dongfeng Race Team. Dongfeng Race Team are stuck on the wrong tack. They kind of turn the boat around because the wind is shifting at the same time as they're turning. And Vestas is going to gain here clearly, on at least Dongfeng Race Team, because big left shift and obviously much better conditions for Vestas in this same area as when Dongfeng was sailing here. They had no wind, so the transition was the smoothest for Vestas, I would say. And obviously Team SCA have done fantastically well. I mean, look at Alvi Medica. They're stuck on land there. They're really stuck on land in no wind. They're not getting anywhere. They're trying to get out, but they're just watching everyone else sail past them. They can't get anywhere. Very frustrating for Alvi Medica.
Is this left-hand shore looking better now for the boats?
It's hard to tell. I mean, right now the breeze is filling in. There is wind filling in here. Across Vestas is very powered up. I mean, they're heeling over like crazy. And I think the wind just filled in from the middle and from the left. So yes, I think you're right. I think you want it to be not on the Lisbon side, but the other side. And that's where it filled in the first. So I still think the breeze is going to be further north, further up. But the wind certainly filled in from those who are furthest away from Lisbon first. So that's not the good news for Alvi Medica. I imagine they were second place and looking really good close to Mapfre. So now Vestas actually had Tack there and decided to work themselves even closer to the opposite land here. So looking up through the bridge, I would say that the left side is now looking better. More solid breeze on the left side, close to that Christ statue on the land, and less breeze on the Lisbon side.
Well, Team Vestas Wind tacking in what relatively is a lot of breeze for that boat there. Certainly it's gone their way. Dongfeng Race Team slipping behind Abu Dhabi Ocean Racing, but if they're near Team Vestas Wind, they might catch this new breeze first and they might be able to pull that back to their advantage.
Just looking at the tracks here, I mean, it looks like the kids have been drawing on the car, you know, so they're going around all over the place. But obviously, Nico, he likes what he sees out on the left, so he's having a dig into it. You know, he wants to push into that pressure a little bit more. We see Mafre and who we got here, Brunel, coming out that way as well. Team SCA down very close to Alpha Medica. They're going to be looking at the Tack to get out of this left-hand side. It's all guard him in Abu Dhabi Ocean Racing. They're back. They're fully pressed up here on the zeros and into this new pressure. Tactician's nightmare out there today.
Abu Dhabi Ocean Racing crossing in front of the Chinese boat Dongfeng Race Team. So at the moment, the advantage going to Abu Dhabi Racing as they sail off to that left-hand side, looking upwind where this new breeze has come from. Out in front, we still have Mafre, Team Alvi Medica battling it out. But Team SCA and Team Brunel have all come into the mix. Look at the pressure now for Team Vestas Wind. The boat's starting to lean over, the keel starting to have an effect, just starting to swing it over, so plenty of power.
Well, I think the boys will be relishing in this. They've been obviously struggling for the last hour and a half out there, and all of a sudden they're powered up, they've got something to work with. So the trick to this is staying in it. It's just going to be all about pressure out here and just trying to make sure you can stay with it for as long as you can and connect what they've got now to what they're going to get on the other side of the bridge. You know, it really is a tough old day out there for the tacticians.
Well, look at the track here. Everybody's starting to find a little bit of pace. The speed's starting to come up. And at the top left-hand side, look at Alvi Medica. Somehow that boat is sailing very high. Mafre, who was leading, has now slipped their way into third place in a tight battle with Team Brunel. Bauer Becking maybe just squirting out in front. Another place lost for the Spanish team.
Yes, this is tough here. I mean, what Bauer's going to be doing, he's going to be doing everything he can to push up on their line and put them in their dirty air. But the tricky thing is how long it's going to last. You look at this picture here, you can see where the breeze stops. There's just a hard line between where this puff stops and there's nothing. But of course, all the wind we're talking about is coming from where we can't see that shot. But I'm pretty sure the other side of the bridge there, as we're panning around, we can see what's in it to come. But Brunel, beautiful job of working up to Maffrey's line at the moment.
Fantastic sailing from the Dutch boat Team Brunel, closing right up in front of the Spanish boat Maffrey. Maffrey now down to 4th place. The boat that's made the biggest gain at the moment, Team Alvi Medica and SCA on top of the north side. And we're seeing a big split here. Alvi Medica liking the city side of the river, where Team Brunel, Team Vestas, Abu Dhabi Ocean Racing down towards the other side. So if this breeze starts going patchy again, we could really be seeing some big movement.
But I think it'd be really interesting to see what breeze direction they come out of here with, because if that sail's setting there, it means that breeze direction is coming from the other direction on the other side. See how they come down a little bit into it. It's obviously very light there, so they've sailed out of the pressure there, and the other boats are staying in the pressure. So pressure is king right now. Yeah, these guys have got to try and get their noses back over and get connected with the other guys on the other side of the fleet. Starting to edge into it now. We'll see as they build up, as the boat accelerates, you can come up to your normal on the wind angles. So though we're getting close to that now, we'll be seeing how interesting to see how it all pans out. I think Team Brunel looking the strongest at the moment.
Well, Charlie Enright, the young skipper of Alvi Medica, was saying that he was hoping his advantage of having sailed here in Lisbon more than the other teams would pay off. The other teams, they've had 10 days in this port now, but Alvi Medica at the moment, they look like they're on to something special. They are leading this race from the northern side of the river. Dongfeng race team over on that side, and Team SCA towards the other side, Team Brunel and Maffrey. This is a big split at the moment. Maybe Charlie Enright onto something good. Maybe Team Brunel on the other side is going to come out ahead. A big moment that these two boats come back together.
Absolutely. With Team Brunel just going through the tack now, and we'll see how they look when they line up. Now they're just slightly to the left of centre of the race course. So this could see them getting through the span of the bridge. But we've had a few lead changes in the last 20 minutes, haven't we?
Some major lead changes. The worst one for Maffrey, leading and looking quite comfortable at the bottom of the course, and now being pulled back into the pack. They are in the middle of the river at the moment, the middle of your screen as you can look at them. Abu Dhabi Ocean Racing up at the top. Canute, this looks like this new breeze is making a big change.
Absolutely, and you can see Abu Dhabi here are going to cross through the spectator fleet as well. Pretty tough here and risky moves in here. And absolutely, we can see that Alvi Medica as well is getting now in front of Maffrey. In fact, Alvi Medica is crossing in front of Maffrey, so Maffrey is going to have to bear away there on the other side. But this is about now also avoiding the strong current. You know, the strong current that's going to set them down is strongest in the middle, so the guys will have to want to play the sides, and that's what the big gain from Alvi Medica probably come from. You know, and sitting out in the middle like Vesta is doing now is never going to be good, because you're going to sail in much stronger current against you.
Well, Team Brunel coming out from that southern side of the river are looking pretty good against Alvi Medica. Alvi Medica, they've beaten Maffrey at the moment, but Maffrey very close on that duck. So one little shift going their way, a little bit more speed, and the Spaniards could be back in the lead.
Yeah, Team SCA coming into the mix here as well. And really interesting, it was a great shot there, but to see the effect of the tide there with the boats actually struggling against it. I think we're going to see the boats sort of going on a carousel as they come up here, as to who goes into the shore, gets relief, comes out, they're going to lead and cross, and then the next boat will come out. So there's another cross coming up here. Alpha Medica, Brunel looking comfortably ahead at this stage. Crucial cross this.
Alvi Medica on starboard, Team Brunel on port, but it looks like Bauer Becking and his team have been able to cross clear ahead of Alvi Medica. And in fact, Charlie Enright deciding, well, we're not going to be able to get them and we don't want to go too far.
Watch the effect of the tide here as he goes for the tack. So they've lost their power against the current. You can see them just disappearing down the harbour against Brunel. Now that's a really tricky thing to have to do there, because what's happened here is he's been flushed down, but now he's been put potentially into Brunel's dirty air. So this is played beautifully into Bauer's hands. He'll be feeling comfortable there. He's just moved himself into a very powerful position where he's now going to be legging it for the other side of the harbour.
It's painful how early you need to release that code 0 when you tack, how early before the tack you have to let go of all the power. Team Brunel now, for the moment at least, in the lead, sailing on top of the Americans, Alvi Medica. Maffrey on the other side of the course, that's the boat that's got the split, so we could see another change.
We could see another change. Now, a key factor coming up here, they're getting to the top end of the range of these zeros, very difficult to manoeuvre, so pretty soon they're going to have to make a call. Is this breeze going to stay in? Should I go to my smaller jib and be able to manoeuvre and tack whenever I want to? or do I need to hang on this because the breeze is going to drop off and die down? So it'd be interesting to see how they play this, but I've got a sneaky feeling they'll be hanging on to the horsepower here.
I guess if we're going to see a boat make that, it's probably going to be the boats towards the back making that risky move first. If you're Team Brunel at the moment, you're just going to watch your competitors and just try to match them at least. But it's Mafre, they are the boat that are out of range of Team Brunel. With this breeze today being so patchy and so shifty, if you let a boat sail to the other side of the river, chances are they might find something and they might be able to come back into the game. There on the virtual eye, you can see the distance between Team Brunel and Mafre, the Spanish boat getting close to the Tack for that northern shore, and as they come back around from that side, maybe finding a little bit of a relief from the tide, we could see them coming back in with a little bit of distance gained.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see just how much they push in up on that shore, because as you come out of the tide, you sort of get lifted up a little bit and you can scoot up the shore for a little bit longer, and then you've got to time your tack over. We should put some money down here. You're going to have to get your money out. Who's going to win the next cross? I think Mafre, becoming the right-of-way boat, may well cross Brunel, and as they get relief now is the maximum effect for them. Out of the tide, they'll be looking to really utilise this as much as they can.
Well, I'm going to wait to see how the Spanish boat tack that code 0. We saw with Medica early how punishing it is to be having to ease that sail, furl it all the way up. But Brunel and Mafre at the moment, you've got to say, Mafre do look like they're going quite well on the current.
Here
Canoe, it looks like that right-hand side might be paying. Well, Mafre coming out from that right-hand side. They've just completed the tack, or at least they've just gone head to wind. That code 0 taking an age to furl. This is when you lose all that advantage that you've gained. Team Brunel still sailing nicely on the breeze. Remember, the Spanish boat in third place. They ducked Medica, so they might not be able to overhaul the Dutch boat Team Brunel, but the question will be when they come back against Medica, have they made some gains?
Well, it looks like the advantage line's clearly Brunel, so you're bet safe there at the moment. I won't be taking any money off you, but it'll be interesting to see how they come out of that corner, the cross with Medica, and just how much relief they are actually getting over there, if any. But here we go, about 120 metres, so you're pretty safe.
Well, the gain going towards Mafre between them and Medica, and Mafre coming out from that right-hand side on starboard. Team Brunel leading the fleet at the moment, but watch Medica on the right-hand side. Do they go behind Mafre and try and dial in even closer to the shore, or do they tack early and try and stay with clear air?
I would be dipping if I was them, because to do any other manoeuvre, you can't do a lead tack with a code 0. So here they go, they're dipping it. So that's really your only option. The slam dunk manoeuvres that you see in the Americans they just can't be done. Look at that. And here comes they're fully powered up, those guys. There's plenty of heel there. Ooh, that's going to be close.
Well, you can see just how overpowered that boat is as it bears away with the code 0. And Charlie Enright did a very good job of hanging on to that boat there. If they had broached up in that position, that would have been a pretty sorry end to this leg.
That would have been a very sorry end to this leg for both those boats. I think they might have lost control for a second there. Somebody will be getting a right roasting for not easing that code 0 sheet.
Well, it's turned out not too bad for Medica. They are going to dial in further to the shallow waters on that right-hand side. The Spanish boat, Mafre, coming back into the mix, but still out in front, Team Brunel. And there we can see Medica electing to go for the J1, so a tack change.
Well, yeah, it'll be a tack change, and I'm pretty sure that dip was that probably helped them make the decision there, where they got completely overpowered with the 0. But not a bad move to be doing here at the moment. Get onto the sail, you're going to be able to tack much cleaner, more when you want to, and have much less of a loss in terms of the manoeuvre of trying to haul that code 0 around. You can see here too on Mafre how out of shape they get when they get up range. You're having to sail inside them, so that's why you see the front of the sail backing there. You're sailing more off the back of it, so that's a much less efficient aerodynamic shape to work with.
So Canute, we're seeing Medica setting up for the J1. Do we expect the rest of the fleet to follow suit?
Absolutely. I mean, Team Brunel just hoisted their J1 as well, and the breeze is clearly building. I mean, there's no doubt about it. And the benefit you get from the code 0 is not very big when you have to tack this many times, because you lose so much in each of the tacks. So I'm expecting the whole fleet to go on J1s very soon. I see Brunel is going into their tack change right now, and I think we will see all of them doing it. But clearly paying off with less current on the right side here, close to the shore side, and I think we'll see lots of short tacking, and that's a lot easier to do with the J1s.
Team Brunel now about to tack and go through the upwind gate underneath the bridge on their way back up to the start line area. Once through that line, it's off to the open sea, and then the offshore section of this leg begins. Now that was a pretty long furl, but that J1 now up and deployed on board Team Brunel, so tacking should be a lot easier.
Yeah, pretty nice manoeuvre by the guys there. They just managed to sneak that just on the inside of the jib there, which is pretty crucial for getting it down, because don't want that going down the leeward side, boys, so they're working pretty hard to get that down. Bauer's actually giving them a hand. We see him luffing up like that. He's just helping them rock that sail around on the weather side, because they know just how much of a pain it is to try and get it round to leeward. They're looking pretty comfortable into those J1s, so they're obviously well into the range of them, and they'll get that zero down on the deck, but I don't think they'll disconnect it. They'll keep that sail available and ready to go.
Well, this patchy breeze has done nothing really to restore our confidence in it sticking around. Mafre now furling their code 0, and it's quite a difficult job to furl these sails up.
Especially normally you do a little bear away when you do this, so this is maximum pain. There's a huge amount of resistance going on there. Everyone's on the pumps giving it everything they got. You can see how hard the lactose acid will be building up in the arms there. Yeah, I miss those days, mate. I was built for that sort of thing. But no, these guys get it tucked away, and then they get it off the lock, and it's a little bit of timing with the tack as they get into it. So it's a brutal manoeuvre with that one. They'll be going deep in the lungs after that one.
A nice tidy furl for the Spanish boat Mafre now onto their J1 as the breeze starts to build as we're into the final section of this import race here in Lisbon.
Yeah, it's sort of getting settled into this breeze. The crews will be very happy now to get onto these J1s, because they can focus on the sailing a little bit more, and it opens all the options up for the tacticians. They know they can do a tack with it being a much less risky manoeuvre. It's with much less losses associated with it. So we'll see them settle down and really start playing the shifts a little bit more. But I don't think that's the last as we've seen on these code zeros. They may be out again before they clear around Cascais.
And this import section of leg 8, this has been nothing but tough racing. I mean, you almost expect these import sections to just be a procession, a nice wave to the city, but this has been testing the sailors right from the start line.
Well, mentally very demanding, and this mentally and emotionally very demanding, because you're dealing with all these factors and variables and wind shifts which you just can't pick them, and you're doing your very best to position the boat the whole time, and sometimes it doesn't go your way.
Now, you were mentioning earlier the importance of getting the code 0 down on the windward side of the J1, and as Alvi Medica clear the bridge, you can see that code 0 still up in the air, and it's on the wrong side for a quick easy drop. So maybe they've decided, well, we'll leave it up until we tack later.
We see Mafre here, they're working hard to get it down. Now it can be a little bit messy, so I think Alpha Medica are obviously talking about a tack, so they'll just leave it up, and once they tack over, drop it down. You can see this takes 3 guys to try and get this down. It's sitting in the maximum drag area there. It's you've got to drag around 15 things, especially if it goes in the water. So it's definitely worth hanging on to it, just that last tack.
Well, Team Vestas Wind making their way upwards through the fleet. They've now closed into 4th place. Abu Dhabi Ocean Racing just behind them in 5th. In fact, almost impossible to call between these two boats. Team SCA behind those two, trying to get themselves back in front. It's quite difficult as the fleet starts to compress here as we go underneath the bridge. Not a lot of options for clear air.
No, you're really just going to be trying to pick a nice clear lane, so they'll be crossing these guys stern. They'll probably go pretty close to that pylon there and tack over on a nice clear ley line, and see if they can get some tidal relief as they come through. And it'll all be about just trying to find nice lanes to work in and out off the shore as they come up and out of the harbour. So Dongfeng, they didn't have a great day yesterday. They've been struggling in these conditions, but back today, see the off the bridge, just how much current is there. There's so much current there, it's actually pushing the water in the front of it away from, so there's a wake, there's like a backheading. It's just impressive the amount of water that's being forced around that.
So an incredibly big challenge for these sailors, and as Team SCA, they've made that ley line pretty tight to the support for that bridge, and if they're pretty close to not being able to clear that, actually, that's quite a good call made from pretty early on.
Yeah, it's quite a brave ley line there, but they got plenty of room there. It's massive amounts of current there. It's just unbelievable shot, that one. You can really get some idea of the force of the water that's being, these boats are fighting as they come out. So now you'll see SCA just settle into a nice angle and really push this right to the shore.
heading over to the north shore of the river on their way back up to the starting area. Team Brunel still up in the lead. The fleet racing their way out to the start line area. That signifies gate 5. Once through that line, they can then use their outriggers if they want to. The jumpers start coming off the boat and they're into the C section of this race.
Yes, yeah, it's time to get into offshore mode, but as you can see from that shot there, there's an awful lot of coastal racing. There's 2 or 3 bays to get through. You've got to get round through Cascais, and then big right-hand turn, you start working your way up the Portuguese coast there. Very beautiful coastline, but very tricky sailing. Dongfeng next under the bridge.
Well, Dongfeng race team, this has been a pretty disappointing race for them at the moment, and they haven't really been able to get themselves back into the race. Knut, from where you are, this breeze looking a bit more solid now?
Oh no, more and more solid all the time. The race committee just told me they have 15 knots, so 15 knots at the start gate, and that's really nice. So I'm very happy because we have a very strong current here. We're looking at 3 knots of current, even more some places. So you need a bit of breeze to get out of Lisbon, but so beautiful race right now in front of the city here.
Team SCA through the bridge, followed by Dongfeng race team, both boats heading out to the northern side, and they're having to work pretty hard, fully powered up on their way upwind. Normally what we'd see in this scenario is they go through the start line area, past the leaving mark, onto a reach, but upwind sailing for the next few hours. Challenging work for the crews.
Well, it's actually going to be upwind sailing for the next few days. The forecast has them going, short tacking the whole way up the coastline. What does that mean? Well, that means that you're not going to get any sleep for a start, because when they say short ports and long starboards, you may only be on starboard for an hour and a half, 2 hours. So there's not going to be a lot of downtime for the crews where they in between manoeuvres and keeping an eye on their boats around you. This picture is going to be the same picture we're looking at in 3 days' time if you went up to Cape Finisterre and had a look. So, but Navigator's race now, this next section is going to be all about just pushing in as close as you can to the shoreline and tacking over. Touch and go, or don't touch, but that's the general idea. Just get in there as close as you dare and roll it over and maximise your tidal relief.
And for the sailors, they've seen this forecast being played out, so they know that this first night is going to be pretty uncomfortable, pretty challenging, and it's not really going to let up. A few nerves on display.
Yeah, it was a bit nervy around the base this morning. You can sort of tell, the crew get a little bit flighty, and they're thinking ahead. And actually, this is the worst bit. You get out there, and in all the races I've done, I thought you'd get used to it, something you get better at, and quite frankly, it just got worse. You think about these periods in here. There's so many mistakes you can make. You do as many manoeuvres in this first hour and a half into the race as you do in a whole leg. So you think about it. So about 1, 2 o'clock in the morning tonight, when everything settles down, it's nice and quiet. The helicopters are gone, and it's just you and the other boats, and you're racing. You'll have a bit of a quiet moment. Okay, yacht racing. That's what we're here to do, and you'll settle in, and everything's good.
But not too many quiet moments, because of course now we're into the sort of sprint mode, as we could call it, for the Volvo Ocean Race. We've done 40,000 miles all the way around the world. We've got a little over 2,000 miles left to go, but 20% of the points still up for grabs. And we're pretty safe to say that we'd expect to see these crews hiking through the night and really having to push themselves pretty hard.
There'll be no downtime. What you'll be doing is you just do a buddy system instead of a watch system, where you'll try and rest your opposite whenever you can. You'll try and get key people, in some sort of state where they get enough rest to be able to make good decisions, and you'll abuse coffee like it's never been abused before. You'll be living off the stuff.
And what about sleeping? What about resting? Are they going to be permanently in their wet weather gear?
Yeah, no, you're rigged up and ready to go. We call it the fireman's standby. If you can, you'll jump in your bunk and you pull your pants down around your ankles and just throw something over you to keep you warm. But it's all about just being able to scramble up on deck and get straight on the job if something needs to happen. And you'll be doing everything you can. It's all about stability sailing upwind, so it'll be on the high side, and a lot of time it'll be those who aren't doing anything will be sitting on the rail.
So a very different style of leg to what we've seen in the past. Big intensity.
Completely different, and my past experiences show me I find these legs way tougher than the open ocean legs, because there's constant navigation, there's constant position changes, shift changes, manoeuvres, and by navigation, you've got to stay out of traffic separation zones. We had a bit of a kerfuffle in the last leg with 2 traffic separation zones. The English Channel is one massive traffic. And you've got sandbanks and navigational issues and currents and overfalls, and so there's an awful lot that's going to happen in the closing stages of this race.
Well, Canute, we're just wondering what are we in store for the next few days with this weather? We're talking a lot about strong winds and upwind sailing. It's going to be pretty tough.
Yeah, I think in particular from Tuesday morning it's going to be really, really hard. It looks, when they get out the Bay of Biscay, you know, getting 35 knots plus from northeast there is kind of the perfect storm scenario where everything aligns and you get big waves and rough sea. But the tricky thing is when are they going to sleep? I spoke to Ian Walker this morning before he went out, and I asked him, you know, what are you planning for watches and systems? And he kind of looked at the first 24 hours as the place to rest and still trying to get some sleep tonight, because the last 48 hours here is just going to be hard on, and it's going to pay off if you can have the guys on rail and work the boat all the time, and they're not going to be able to sleep. I mean, it's almost impossible, as we know, it's almost impossible to sleep inside the boat when you are in 35 knots wind and not a wind upwind. You can't even stay in your bunk. You get thrown out of the bunk when you're trying to sleep. So the first night is probably the rest the guys have, and then they're just going to go hard on.
And how long, Canute, do you think it's going to be until we start seeing the finishers?
Well, we are looking at a finish somewhere between very late on Wednesday and early on Thursday at the moment. That's what the current predictions are. But as we know, this can change, in particular when you have an upwind scenario. If the wind shifts a little bit to the left or the right, so we suddenly start having longer tacks and laying and things like that, then that shortens very dramatically and quickly. But we're looking at Wednesday, late Wednesday or early Thursday. That's what we're looking at the moment.
And Canute, how do you expect to see the battle for first place developing between Abu Dhabi Ocean Racing, Dongfeng and Team Brunel? Splitting, staying together? How is it going to look?
Well, I think they will just do their best at the moment. I don't think they will think about it, but I think there is a scenario here that Abu Dhabi has a lot more to lose than the others. You know, the others don't really have much to lose. So I think you can find a situation in the Biscay where Abu Dhabi probably will play a little safer because they can afford to lose a couple of points through a rough night, while a team like Brunel or Dongfeng need every single point they can get. You know, like so there is slightly different situations, and that's what's making it interesting.
And if you were being able to give a little bit of advice to Ian Walker at the beginning of this leg, looking at the finish line almost coming into view and being able to put his hands on the trophy, what would that advice be?
Well, as I want to keep the racing close to the end, I will advise him to finish in 5th place on the next leg. But I don't think he's going to like my advice. You know, he's going to want to close this whole story in France, because if he can close it, that's obviously better. But I don't think that's going to be easy for him. You know, he needs to keep Dongfeng and Brunel behind him. And these both of them are very good upwind, strong wind boats. I think Brunel has always been fast upwind in this strong breeze, and yeah, it's not going to be easy for them.
Well, I think it's interesting that you say that, Canute, because certainly in my recent memory, this is the closest finish that we're facing for the Volvo Ocean Race. Normally at this point we have a clearly established winner in mind, but 3 boats all with the potential to do it.
Well, in fact we have 5 boats that can mathematically win it, you know, if you think worse combinations, although it's quite unrealistic. But no, I think it's one of the closest ones, and it's also really close between the other boats. Let's not forget that if you don't win the Volvo Ocean Race, it's pretty nice to be on the podium, and the fight for the podium is really between 5 boats, very clearly, and that's going to be interesting. And then who knows how Vestas is going to play out. Right now, if you look how Vestas have done the last 40 minutes compared to Dongfeng race team, they have done a hell of a lot better. So Vestas is clearly catching up here, and maybe they were just struggling with their angles and the trim in the light airs, and when it starts blowing, Vestas is going to be one of the stronger boats. You don't know that, and they can obviously place themselves nicely between whoever they want.
And when you were envisaging this edition of the race, did you see the race coming down to this last few legs? We're going into a different stage of racing, different style of racing, but 20% of the points still up for grabs.
Well, I always hope, you know, regardless of what you do of one design or not, you always hope for close racing and close racing all the way to the end, and that's also why the last legs count the same as the long legs, even though they are much shorter, and that really is to pack points at the end to make it exciting all the way to the finish. And I can tell you, this is a marathon. I mean, I looked at the sailors this morning when I shook their hands at the dock and said the goodbye and good luck, and I can see some very tired faces. Also some skinnier guys. I saw particularly Charles Codrillier. He looks really skinny. He was God, they have lost weight, all of them, and they're tired. They've been out for 8 months racing, and you know, it's the last bit of energy they're going to put into these last 2 legs. So it's hard for people to comprehend how hard it is to race non-stop for so many months, and then having to fight in these short sprint battles in the end. It's incredibly tough.
Well, Knut, we're just watching Team Vestas win going over the bow of Abu Dhabi Ocean Racing. This race, very, very hard fought on the water, and it's certainly been quite intense this year for the Volvo Ocean Race. And Knut, for you, is it as intense as you envisaged?
Well, for me, it has probably been more intense than I hoped for, particularly because of the incident with Vestas. But it has been much closer than what we had expected. And all this close racing across the whole ocean. I mean, match racing in the Southern Ocean, which we had on leg 5, and really close racing all the way across the Atlantic. I think what it does, it increases the intensity for the sailors. So they sleep less, they're more stressed, they know they cannot make a single mistake. I just remember that leg we had to New Zealand where Brunel was leading, you know, half the leg, and then they made one single decision mistake over a night and went from first to last almost, you know, and it's and that's how the racing is now. And we see the positioning between them now, and this next morning it can be completely upside down again, because if someone makes a mistake, everyone else is fast, so everyone else is going to get past you.
Well, Knut, with this new intensity to the race, what differences have you seen in the sailors as we go through all these legs, and we've completed 40,000 miles around the world? Are the sailors looking a bit tired?
They're looking tired. They're looking, I mean, I think the physical fitness of the sailors is more important than it's ever been before. First of all, you have to remember there's only 8 people on the male boats, 11 on the female boats, and only 8 to sail a big boat like this is really short-handed when you sail it with maximum intensity all the time. So I think they're tired. I think the guys who've been the fittest in the beginning are going to benefit from it in the end, you know, because if you start fit, it's hard to build fitness during this race. It's even hard to maintain it. And normally what happens to the sailors is that they lose muscle and they lose something all the way through the race. So they come out in the end less fit, skinnier, and with less muscles. Even though they practice as much as they can in the ports, it is really, really difficult for them to maintain their fitness level. So, but as I said, on the dock this morning at our dock-out ceremony, there were some very, very tired guys. I can see, you know, some more wrinkles, some sunburned, skinny hands, and some tired faces.
And as we've seen, Knut, with those tired faces and those tired bodies, you have to make some tactical changes with the crew, and some of these sailors wishing to do the race with a complete crew, no changes, keeping the same core sailors, but that's pretty difficult.
Well, it is only 2 boats in the whole 42 years of history of the Volvo Ocean Race and the Whitbread that has managed to sail from the start to the finish with the same crew, and that says a lot. It's just incredibly hard to keep a group of people motivated, fit, without any injuries from start to finish. And I know that, at least I remember Team Brunel said that, and Bowie Becking said, I'm going to go with the same crew, but even he hasn't managed to do that, because he had quite a few injuries on the boat, and he had to replace Gartian on the last leg here now with an injury. So I think every single boat has had replacements now, and some did it as a strategic plan, and some have been forced to do it because of injuries.
Abu Dhabi Ocean Racing now making a good use of that breeze, and Ian Walker, he's certainly going to be wanting to make this breeze work for him. He's got a big challenge, and as Knut was saying, his team, like everyone else, starting to feel a little bit tired, but he cannot let up at this point.
No, and he's got some seasons veterans around there. I'm just looking at the names on the back of shirts there, and you know, all these guys have been through this before. Phil Harmer, who won the last race. Simon Fisher, he's on his 4th edition of the race. He knows what pressure's all about. Daryl Wislake, Justin Slattery, he's he could be on his 2nd win in the race. So these guys know what it's all about. They know what it's going to take to get this thing over the finish line. So I'm sure, even though they're feeling the pressure now, they'll deliver in the coming days. This is what the Volvo's all about, digging deep.
Well, from the virtual eye, we can see these boats now making good progress up to the start line area, gate 5 of this course. That is the leaving gate for these boats. Team Brunel in the lead, followed by Mafre. Team Vestas Wind making a huge gain to the shore side of the course. They're in 4th place. Alvi Medica just in front of them in 3rd.
I noticed something actually that these Vestas guys, they're all stacked up. They've got all the sails on the weather side already, and some of these boats are still sailing with a couple of jibs on the front. The riding moment is such a crucial factor. See, look at Abu Dhabi there. They've got 2 jibs sitting up the front there. If we look at a shot of Vestas, you'll see all the sails are stacked up on the weather side, which of course is not an easy thing to do when you're short tacking. You know, you're going to have to move all those sails before you tack, which just saps a lot of energy out. So these guys are more taking an approach of let's tack when we can, and I think Nico, he'll just be throwing absolutely everything at it, so he's going to make his guys work pretty hard.
Well, we've seen a big change in the tracks of these boats as they start to come up. Team Vestas Wind on the right-hand side of your picture there, they've made some huge gains at the moment, and they are chasing down Alvi Medica to try and claim 3rd place. Mafre in 2nd, hot on the heels of the Dutch team, Team Brunel. Bauer Becking is looking set to lead the fleet out of Lisbon.
Yeah, he'll be very comfortable doing that. You know, Bauer's a pretty calm customer, and he's no stranger to this part of the world either. So he knows his way around these waters, and he'll be putting everything that he knows into play. And of course, he's got Capey in there, who's he's a bit of a foxhole. Capey. He's pretty experienced navigator. He knows what pressure's all about. You'll barely ever see him crack. So I'm sure that's a pretty strong combination to deliver some good decisions over the coming days.
Well, the breeze, a fantastic relief for these sailors as the boats get up to full power, and as you say, we're expecting to see them start stacking all their gear very soon after this leaving mark. The transition into coastal racing going to be quite difficult. We are expecting the crews to stay up on the sides, hiking into the night, and a lot of short tacks. Team Brunel 0 in on that leaving gate. Mafre just behind Alvi Medica and Team Vestas Wind. One of the losers in the last 10 minutes has been Team SEA, slipping their way down into 6th place. Team Brunel looking quite comfortable at the moment. The big battle will be Team Vestas Wind and Alvi Medica, the battle for 3rd and 4th.
Yeah, just there you can see that shot. You look down the Vestas, there's a nice pile of blue sails just in front of the daggerboard there. So they're definitely going for it, and this is going to be a very key thing in this coming leg. Is that we know Vestas is very capable of placing in a podium, and they could be the one that starts splitting points. So if we get a Brunel at the top with an Alpha Medica and Vestas in between Abu Dhabi, they could really amplify the effect on their points. And you mark my words, they'll be putting it in there if they can. They won't be saying, "Oh, we might affect the outcome here, so we're not going to do it." They'll be let's affect the outcome.
Or the leaving gate coming into view, and if we finished in this position, it certainly would open up the opportunity for Team Brunel or Abu Dhabi Ocean Racing to take the top spot.
Yeah, well, that's going to be crucial, and that'll be part of their game plan. They will actually be trying to play the game that way, I'm sure.
After testing the tacticians with patchy winds and strong tide, the breeze has finally relented and allowed these boats to sail upwind and make their way through the leaving gate and on to Lorient.
Yeah, it's some pretty tough sailing coming ahead for these. So we think this has been pretty intense, but this is just going to continue. Nothing's going to stop here. It's going to get more and more brutal. So we got Mafre coming into his shot here. They're not going to be far off. Alpha Medica just coming through the last gate. Should be seeing the swimmers coming off as well. So they should start lining up in the back of the boats.
Alvi Medica making a nice gain here. Mafre having to sail low. Their track, their ley line taking them over the leaving gate. They've had to bear away to come through. So it looks like Alvi Medica just pinching 2nd place. Team Vestas Wind losing for 4th, and then the Spanish boat Mafre through the gate in 3rd place. So a little bit of a loss there to Mafre.
A little bit of a loss. I've been very impressed with the way that Alpha Medica has sailed today. They've made the most of the opportunities that come forward to them. And of course, Vestas have made probably the biggest gains on the racetrack. They've gone from being completely out the back door to in the top 3. So, and here comes Abu Dhabi Ocean Racing. They're back in touch. It's all there. It's all there to be played for. It's going to be some incredibly tight racing. Very solid breeze on the start boat, and I can assure you, everyone will be enjoying this breeze.
Quite a lot of chop out there as well. A lot of that coming from the spectator boats that are hanging around that area. Abu Dhabi Ocean Racing, Ian Walker will be very relieved to be back in the hunt for the lead. Team Brunel, a key boat for this leg. At the moment, Team Brunel and Dongfeng Race Team are on 22 points all square. Abu Dhabi Ocean Racing 6 points ahead of them. So if Team Brunel or Dongfeng can finish way ahead of Abu Dhabi Ocean Racing, suddenly Ian Walker starts to feel the trophy slipping from view.
Yeah, it's going to be all to play for. And of course, here comes Team SCA and Dongfeng. Now, very strong flavour of French sailing going on here. Sam will be enjoying leading out here, and both Sam and Charles are very good friends, but very old rivals, and both will be burning with just as much ambition as the other to start leading to bring that boat into Lorient first. And it looks like Mr. Musto ready to go.
Well, the first jumper from the fleet, Abu Dhabi Ocean Racing, Nigel Musto, jumps off the boat. This is somebody who's certainly no stranger to sailing, and you'd hope he's pretty comfortable with the clothes he's wearing in the water.
Yeah, he'll be quite relieved that his life jacket went off, I think. There. So it's giving his company product a good test. But he looks pretty wet there, so obviously he didn't opt for the wet weather gear today.
Well, I tell you what, we've been all the way around the world with the Volvo Ocean Race, and we're starting to get into those cities where jumping into the water starts losing its appeal. When we're in Brazil, when we're in Auckland, the water's nice and warm. Now it's really starting to get chilly.
Yeah, I think probably not such a shock to get into this water, but in Lorient, and certainly, well, we shouldn't have jumpers in Gothenburg, but if we do, I can assure you it's still pretty cold in that part of the world at the moment.
I am incredibly impressed with the courage displayed by this jumper here, electing to go off the high side of Team Vestas Wind. That is extremely far out of the water, plus you're going at a fair old speed, maybe about 9 knots at the moment.
Good show there.
Quite a big shock when you hit that water. That's certainly going to wake you up.
Yeah, it was a good exit, that one. Not too bad. Yeah, we've given out some pretty solid scores for jumpers over the last few legs. So well, that one not too bad. We saw a bit better action from Kenny in the last one.
And that image that we just saw there of Team Vestas Wind and the other boats with all the crews up on the side hiking, here we can see with Team SEA, that is going to be the picture that we will see for a long time on this race. All the crew weight needed on the side to counteract the side force from the sails. This is going to be tough racing, and you are not going to want to ease the throttle at all.
No, it's going to be everything you get, and it's also a lot of it's the psyche. It's the psyche that you're giving it everything you've got, and there's a huge amount of support behind this team with the girls out there, and they feel plenty of pressure from us to get out there and perform, and they've been doing such a fantastic job finishing so close to the other boats, and desperate to get out there and just get that one thereafter.
And Team SEA through the leaving gate in 6th place, followed by Dongfeng Race Team. And interesting to see the women on board Team SEA, shorts and t-shirts. When are we expecting to see foul weather gear come out for the fleet?
Well, I think I'm guessing they've all got a pretty good sweat on at the moment after all these manoeuvres they've had to do, so they're probably just enjoying the opportunity to cool down a bit at the moment. But once they start getting out around the corner of Cascais, getting into a bit lumpier seas, they'll be taking one at a time, go downstairs and get the gear on and settle in for the night.
Well, the final boat in the fleet, Dongfeng Race Team, leaves Lisbon in 7th place. Now, that is exactly not where Charles Cordelia wanted to be. His only relief, Abu Dhabi Ocean Racing, his main rival, only 2 spots above him. If he can claw back this distance, he can still turn this leg result into something valuable.
Yeah, I'm sure he won't be reading too much into it. He's, these boats are still in the big picture very much engaged with one another. But he'll be looking for a few opportunities to work his way up the rankings in the next little while. Here we go, another jumper ready to go. He looks like he's more prepared for the water than some of our other jumpers. Yeah.
He looks like he's in a Musto survival suit there, and he's certainly probably used to some slightly different climates and not too happy in the water at the moment. Doesn't want to go off the high side over the top. Going to have to make your way through those guard wires. You don't want them to snag your chin or your life jacket at that last point.
He's got quite a bit of gear on there. One of the boys might have to come back and give him a hand to work on his exit. There we go, deployed and off.
Well, he did well to get himself in the water. You can just see how good that survival suit is. He's floating there quite comfortably.
Yeah, no, it's interesting to see just how well those suits do work. I mean, there's something you even control in those suits as you inflate and deflate them. Now that's there to keep people alive in very cold waters, and all the boats carry one of these for every single crew member, and a couple of spares as well. And actually in the Southern Ocean we tend to put those on instead of our normal wet weather gear because you can inflate them a bit and the air keeps you warm. So I've actually handed them out in angler once too, but we won't talk about that now.
Well, so the import section of leg 8 concluded with Team Brunel in the lead, Team Alvi Medica chasing hard, and at the back of the fleet, Team SEA and Dongfeng Race Team. We are expecting to see some big breeze over the next few hours. It's going to be quite challenging, and then it doesn't really let up for the next few days as well, does it?
No, we'll be looking at some pretty tired, bloodshot eyes in Lorient, I'm sure, as they've battled their way across the infamous Bay of Biscay. But the interesting thing going on here, and we can't see it on the screen at the moment, is Abu Dhabi have actually tacked off pretty early and gone out left. Now, looking at the weather here, you can see this fantastic sort of high pressure system that keeps us warm in Lisbon, but then you've got the big Bay of Biscay with the breeze funneling down around the corners there, and Cape Finisterre has a fantastic effect on amplifying the wind as it comes around. So 40 knots expected there where you see the yellow exclusion zone, and then dropping down from 35 to 20 knots, which is still pretty uncomfortable as you go across the bay.
Well, Canute, a fantastic day of action to start leg 8. Your final thoughts?
Well, I'm first of all very happy the breeze filled in, because it's not fun to when we have the opportunity in front of so many thousand people here in Lisbon that we can show some real sailing, and that's what we can see now. It's really fun here. It's fantastic to see them up. I'm looking at Vestas here. They look fast. They look fast. They're really pushing it, I think, on the other guys, and that's interesting. I mean, the most rested crew, that haven't really been through the same wear and tear as the others, and some pretty nice sails. So that's going to be interesting on the next update on the position report on the app. But no final thoughts from me. I'm keeping my fingers crossed that everyone's going to be in good shape in Lorient. It's going to be a really tough leg in the Bay of Biscay. As we all know, upwind is a lot harder. 35 upwind is a lot different than 35 downwind. So it is going to be some really tough days, and I'm actually quite happy I'm not sailing this leg. It's a lot nicer to sleep in the bed than being thrown around inside a boat. But that's it.
Well, thanks very much for all your input today, Canute. Now, soon these boats are going to be out in the open sea, and then we hand over to Volvo Ocean Race headquarters in Alicante, Spain. Jenny Tulloch has a special Inside Drac edition in store for us.
I'm here in Lisbon, where the more than 600-mile leg 8 to Lorient has just started, which means I have to get back to Alicante because we will be live at 6 p.m. UTC tonight and twice a day, 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. UTC for the rest of the race. So see you back in race control in a couple hours for the Inside Track.
And all this will be available on the Volvo Ocean Race app, putting the race right in your pocket. Well, that turned out to be a rather thrilling import section to this race. Tough for the sailors, but great for the spectators, Richard.
Oh, fantastic. I mean, we've had a pretty good, exciting couple of days of sailing here. I mean, it's been an incredible spectacle here in a fantastic arena in Lisbon. And we've seen some intense pressure going on here, but it's just going to continue over the next 4 days. So I actually feel for these guys. They are in for a tough one. I know just how tough this is going to be. And you kind of miss that battle, but these boys are going to be tired in Lorient and very much in need of a nice cold beer.
Well, thanks for joining me today, Richard. The battle for the overall leader for the Volvo Ocean Race is just hotting up between Team Brunel, Abu Dhabi Ocean Racing and Dongfeng Race Team. All these teams working hard to make their movements up through the scoreboard. It's going to be an exciting leg, and let's see how it develops.